All right, it is past 6:15, so I will call this area plan commission meeting to order. And if you guys want, is there one seat left? Two? Oh, there's two. If you guys are wanting to sit down in a comfy seat. So calling this meeting to order, can we have a roll call, members, please?
Yes, Grant Mueller.
Here.
Dan Sheets.
Here.
Andy Bailey is absent. Walt Minnick.
Here.
Jeff Chanel.
Here.
Chad Colby is absent. Kevin Myers.
Here.
Staff Liz Spitzel and Kat Bell are present, as well as Attorney Jay Moore.
Okay, did we all get a chance to look over the minutes? Anything we need to add? Or can I get a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Who was that?
Jeff.
Jeff made a motion. Did you second?
Yeah, second.
And Kevin seconded. Roll call vote, please, when you get a chance.
Grant Mueller.
Yes.
Dan Sheets.
Yes.
Walt Minnick.
Here.
That would be yes or no in a minute.
Here.
Jeff Chanel.
Yes.
Kevin Myers.
Yes.
5-0.
Okay,
That's, that's the thing.
so no old business
You
on.
got another 7 minutes.
From special meeting.
Oh,
Yeah, the August 5th minutes
special
that you
meeting,
did,
okay.
and then you have the August.
Yes, you're right. You guys have any issues with those?
I would make a motion to approve that also.
Walt seconded, Jeff made the motion. Roll call vote when you get a chance, please.
Grant Mueller.
Yes.
Dan Sheets.
Yes.
Walt Minnick.
Yes.
Jeff Chanel.
Yes.
Kevin Myers.
Yes.
Okay, moving on, no old business, so we'll move on to our public hearings of the night. We have 3. So we will start with the first one, which is application CC-2025-00778, docket number 13-25-SD. Can you please take us through the staff report?
Yes, so this is the petition of Mark Meador, am I pronouncing that correctly? I have no idea what it is. Metter, thank you, I apologize. I get these and reading and phonics don't help me at all on me. All right, this is a request for a primary approval of a 2-lot minor subdivision. Just because we have a crowd, I'm just gonna pause for a minute because some of you, this may be the first time you've ever been in one of our hearings, and these processes can be confusing. So both this case and the next one are subdivisions. So that simply means that land less than 20 acres in size is being divided off for some kind of development. When subdivision hearings occur per state law, if they meet all of the standards that are required, they must be approved. If they do not meet any of the standards that are required, they must be denied. And the Plan Commission is the final deciding body on subdivision approval or denial. Just so you have some context, you're not wondering what I'm talking about, hopefully. So anyway, picking back up, this is a primary approval request for a 2-lot minor subdivision. Subdivisions have a primary approval step with the board and the secondary step that's administrative as they get recorded. And this proposed location is zoned agriculturally, as is all the land surrounding it. The proposed petition site is for 2 lots. They consist of 21.66 acres in total on the west side of 200 West, between 800 North and State Road 26, in section 29 of Owen Township. The proposed lot 1 has 6 acres and an existing dwelling already on it where the petitioner currently resides. The proposed lot 2 is 15.66 acres, and the petitioner wishes to build a new house for himself and his wife, and then allow his son and his family to move into the existing dwelling on lot 1. The site is surrounded by agricultural zoning, which is a mix of tillable farm ground and several rural residential dwellings that are in the area. On the second page for the board, you can see a picture here of lot 1 and lot 2, as well as a photograph of the road showing this is way down a long lane with the existing house. And the new house would be to the left, looking at the picture. And there's another picture that actually shows you lot 2 from 800 North as well. So this site is not in any legal watershed. There's a mix of soil types laid out for board members who may be curious. In terms of request analysis, the petitioner is requesting primary plat approval for Locust Hill, a 2-lot minor subdivision. The standard rural development protection language is included in the covenants. The surveyor's office stated that on August 5th, 2025, this proposed subdivision's drainage was unanimously approved by the Drainage Board. The Health Department has approved the new lot is suitable for a septic system. It will require a perimeter drainage outlet, and that outlet has been located and is shown on the plat to daylight on site with enough fall. County Highway has no objection to a drive to access the new lot, and the reciprocal enforcement clause in the covenant is included and can be initiated by any adjacent landowner within a quarter mile. In terms of principles and standards of design, we highlight the two with minor subdivisions that are the most relevant. There were not any issues with the other general standards, most of which apply to major subdivisions in the ordinance. But first, that the restrictive covenants are properly prepared and legally sound and incorporated in the plat. And the restrictive covenants were provided to Jay Moore to review. He reported no issues with them as shown in the primary plat. Secondly, subdivision name. The proposed name of the subdivision shall not duplicate or too closely approximate phonetically the name of any other subdivision already in Clinton County. Having checked with the county recorder, the proposed name for the request, Locust Hill, does not duplicate anything already platted. There was a previous name chosen, but during the filing on the Drainage Board's agenda, they discovered there was duplication, so they did change it to Locust Hill, and that name does work. Consequently, because it meets all the standards of the subdivision ordinance, staff recommends to grant primary approval to this minor subdivision.
Okay, thank you. Is petitioner present? Would you like to add anything, sir? No? Okay. Okay. Will you state your name, please, and who you're with?
My name is Seth Johnson with 40 Parallel Surveying out of Tipton, surveyor representing this case. As always, staff reports pretty thorough, more thorough than I would be, and this lot 1 has an existing house on it, and lot 2 is a nice site for their house. So,
Okay.
any questions? I'll try to answer.
Okay. You guys have any questions for him?
I do not.
Pretty straightforward, pretty simple.
Need a microphone or something.
We're just talking among the board.
No.
So,
Talking about him.
you talking about him? Okay.
Better?
Yeah.
Free bird! I would recommend the planning commission approve this one lot minor subdivision Locust Hill.
I'll second.
Liz, did you get that motion?
I got Dan making a motion to approve the primary plat for Locust Hill. I did not get a second.
Kevin seconded. And then roll call vote when you're ready, please.
Brett Mueller,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Jeff Chanelowitz,
Yes.
Kevin Myers.
Yes.
5-0, so the primary plat is approved. We have secondary ready, you can bring that file in the office, and then, as you guys are here in earlier cases, you're welcome to join us every now, but if you don't wish to, we're not offended if you still have.
All right, we'll move on to our second hearing of the night, which is application CC-2025-00781, docket number 14-25-SD. Can you please take us through that, Liz?
I can, I think I'm already gonna have a name problem again. So the applicant is Janet. Final? Perfect, sorry. This is again a request for primary approval. This is another 2-lot minor subdivision, 5 acres. This property is, well, everything surrounding it are zoned agriculturally. The proposed petition site will consist of 2 lots on a total of 19.79 acres on the east side of 900 West, between 550 North and 700 North in Section 8 of Madison Township. Lot 1 is 11.53 acres. It's currently vacant with the exception of an existing barn. Lot 2 is 7.84 acres and has an existing dwelling where the petitioner resides. Everything around is agricultural, except there are 4 platted lots to the south that have been previously rezoned to the R1 Rural Residential Zoning District. Staff's for the new vacant lot under the point system, which I guess for the crowd, the point system is a way of analyzing whether or not a home site in the agricultural district may or may not be appropriate. Homes are not permitted uses in the ag district. There's special exception uses. which in layman's terms means they have to come get approval, not from this board, but from the Board of Zoning Appeals before they're allowed to build on farm ground. So the point system is an administrative way of really obvious ones. It has different criteria on it, like whether the road is paved, how many houses are nearby, if there's a confined feeding, it would impinge on, those kinds of things. If it scores 10 points or more, it doesn't have to go for a hearing. If it's less than 10 points, then it has to go to the board and have a conversation there about the merits of the lot. So in this case, it did score under the point system, but it did not score enough points, so it did go to the Board of Zoning Appeals on July 22nd of 2025 and was granted special exception approval, consequently moving on to the subdivision phase. The lot with the existing dwelling on it does not create the rules and will no longer have at least 20 acres with it, which was how it was exempt from the subdivision process when it was built. So consequently, it needs to be included in the proposed minor subdivision as well, or to keep it legal. So heaven forbid something were to happen to the house, it could be rebuilt without having to come through a hearing process. So on the second page, again, you got a picture of the proposed plat and building setback lines, and then a photograph of the petition site from 900 West. This site also is not located in a legal watershed, and just has a few different soil types that are there in case you're curious to read how that's distributed. In terms of request analysis, the petitioner is requesting primary plat approval for a 2-lot minor subdivision. The standard rural development protection language is included in the covenants. The drainage board granted drainage approval August 5th of 2025. The health department has approved the new lot is suitable for a septic system. It will also require a perimeter drainage outlet. That location has been indicated on the primary plat. It daylights on site with enough fall. County Highway has no objection to a drive access to the new lot, and the reciprocal enforcement clause in the covenants is included and can be initiated by any adjacent landowner within a quarter mile. In terms of principles and standards of design, again, for a minor subdivision, we need restrictive covenants properly prepared and legally sound incorporated in the plat. The restricted covenants were reviewed by Jay Moore for legal soundness, and he did not report any issues with them as shown on the primary plat. In terms of subdivision name, the proposed name of the subdivision shall not duplicate or too closely approximate phonetically the name of any other subdivision in Clinton County. Having checked with the county recorder, there were not any other names that were similar. So consequently, because it meets all the standards of the subdivision ordinance, staff would recommend to grant primary approval to the 2-lot minor subdivision.
Okay, thank you. Does the petitioner have anything to add? Okay. Anything from you, sir?
Is this better? Nothing? Okay. Seth Johnson with 40th Co-op Parallel Surveying, representing this case as well. Nothing to add. It's similar to the last one, straightforward. So, any questions?
Okay. Pretty straightforward, I think. Just like the last one.
I did visit the site,
Okay.
the board recommends approval, it's up to great location, I will make a motion to approve the subdivision.
I'll set it.
Okay.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. Roll call vote when you can, please.
Bill Fuller,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Jeff Chanelli,
Yes.
Kevin Myers.
Yes.
So again, primary plat is approved, so we have secondary ready, just bring it down to the file it, and welcome to hang out with us, or move on, whatever suits your evening.
Okay. So before we move on to our next case, I will have to recuse myself. I have a personal conflict with this case. So I will be passing that to the president honors to Dan for the evening. So.
All right, thank you very much.
There are now a couple seats together, and then one separate up there in the jury box, so if anybody who's standing wants those.
All right, at this time I will call for the application CC 2025-00787, Dr. 15-25-OZ. Liz, will you take us through the application, please?
You can, and I guess I'll note too, for those of you on the wall, there is a chair here, somebody's welcome to grab as well. I moved over there to try to help.
Man, we got some individuals back here that can't hear what he's saying.
We're just gonna have to try to broadcast, I'll try to summarize if we can't catch it. So I guess if you can't hear, if you can just maybe raise your hand to indicate you're having trouble hearing, so whoever's speaking can get the sense that they need to broadcast a little bit louder, and we'll do our best. So unfortunately, whenever we move out of the commissioner's room, we also lose comprehensive microphones. There's not a way to solve that no matter where we go to, really. So we'll just do our best to deal with it, and if you raise your hand and you can't hear, we'll do our best to broadcast or summarize and try to make sure you're getting the information. Okay, so I'm going to pause a second before I start the staff report again, because I want to make sure everybody understands the nature of the type of hearings, and some of you may have never been to one of our meetings before. So this next hearing is different than the two previous ones. This is a rezoning hearing. So rezonings and amendments to the zoning ordinance are both considered law amendments, not approvals within the existing ordinance. So consequently, the Plan Commission is a recommending body. They can choose to send a negative recommendation, a positive recommendation, or no recommendation on whatever it is that they hear to the legislative body who is actually going to make the final determination. In this particular case, that will be the county commissioners, since this is in the unincorporated areas. If you're here for other cases, sometimes that's one of our small towns instead. They'll work through from a plan commission perspective. They're allowed to consider the comprehensive plan, land use related issues. When it goes to the commissioners, they're allowed to consider pretty much anything that's not discriminatory. So we're one piece of what gets considered as it works its way up to a final decision. So hopefully that just helps you understand a little bit of the framework. And with that, I apologize, this is lengthy, but I'm going to get into the staff report and try to get us going. Before I get started, I do want to note for the board that in this particular case, we did receive a request from the applicant for a 60-day continuance. It's just a simple request. I did forward that to the board ahead of the meeting. It is up to the board whether or not to grant that, although I will note with 4 members, you cannot waive your rules. So the most you could do is a 30-day continuance because you need 2/3 of your membership to vote unanimously in order to waive your board rules, which state you can only do one 30-day continuance. So as staff, given that there's not a land use related reason why the request for continuance is there, and a number of people have given their time to attend, my recommendation to the board would be to go ahead and do the staff report and to take public comment, especially if we don't have 5 at a future hearing. If there's anything the board wants more information on, you have the opportunity to convey that to the applicant if you choose to continue. But in all fairness, the board needs to decide if you want to do a continuance up front or if you'd like me to proceed with the staff report.
All right, I'll address the board. I am not in favor of granting a continuance. I don't know how you feel, but everybody's here tonight. I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's go. I would agree. We have a roll call on that,
Good. Sorry, you guys can keep it down. I'm not complaining, but it's hard to shout. So if you guys don't mind, just so we can all hear each other and you guys have the best chance. Okay, so this is a roll call vote to deny an initial continuance and proceed with the hearing and then decide at the end of comment what to do, correct?
correct, yes.
Okay, so Grant Roller is no longer with us. Dan Sheets.
Yes.
Walt Minnick.
Yes.
Jeff Chanowith.
Yes.
Kevin Myers.
Yes.
Okay, so 4-0, I am going to proceed with the staff report and then hand that back to the board. So, okay. This is the application of Logix Realty LLC. This is a request to rezone land from the A1 agricultural zoning district to the I1 light industrial zoning district. This is in a transitional area. The property in question is agricultural. To the north is agricultural. To the east is a mix of agricultural and industrial. To the south is industrial within the city of Frankfurt, which is a different district than in light industrial within the county jurisdiction. Both sit to the south. And to the west, there is a mix of agricultural and light industrial. In terms of site characteristics, the petition site is 154.92 acres, located on the south side of 100 North, between 450 West and 300 West in Washington Township. The petition cites a large field adjacent to the railroad and industrial park, specifically Conagra on the southern side. There is a utility substation on the west side of the site and 4 houses along the northern section of the field on the south side of County Road 100 North. Farm fields are to the east and everything to the south is industrially zoned. There are 2 older legal non-conforming homes to the southeast that are zoned industrial and have limited options to rebuild when or if they cease to exist. The entire site is directly adjacent to Frankfurt's corporate line and the urban growth area boundary for Frankfurt. The applicant is hoping to place a data center on the site, but staff would note that the county commissioners and the area plan commission are not specifically considering a data center. Specifically, they are considering whether or not rezoning these parcels to light industrial is appropriate, because any potential user could end up on that land. The data center may be what everyone is concerned about, but once it's rezoned, that changes the uses that are or are not allowed moving forward. So for us, it's a broader conversation than just specifically what the applicant at hand may be interested in. That center might not be developed, it might someday no longer be on the site or discontinued, there might be other uses. So all of it should be examined, not just what's the topic at the moment. The site does have an open ditch, and I'm going to make a correction here because Dan and I had a conversation. This was confusing for me. I got it. I'm going to try to state this in a way that makes sense. There are extensive county drainage facilities crossing the site in multiple places. There is a waterway which is open. However, an open ditch from a drainage perspective within the county refers to a very specific item that's regulated, and the county's drainage infrastructure in the location of that open waterway is actually underground in a pipe. It is not the ditch on top. So the floodplain and the navigable water is actually a separate entity than the county drainage facility, which sits underneath. And they're both items that sit across the site. No plan or proposal has been submitted to or discussed with the county surveyor that the surveyor is comfortable with regarding this infrastructure or the added load of more development, and if the existing infrastructure will be sufficient. The drainage infrastructure also serves quite a bit of off-site land. There is floodplain along the ditch, which is not a county ditch, but does sit there, and information would need to be obtained from the state to know elevations and floodway size. And then any relocation or reworking of that ditch will require floodplain review and approval, as well as drainage board review. County Road 300 West is paved and sufficient for heavier traffic volumes. 450 West is also improved and reasonably wide. County Road 100 North on the north side of the site, however, is a single-lane gravel road and insufficient for heavier or higher traffic volumes. There is a very large substation adjacent to the northwest, as well as higher voltage transmission lines along the railroad and another set of even bigger lines crossing from northeast to southwest at the existing substation. Adequately sized sewer and water lines are available at 300 West and 0 East West, and the developer will be able to bring those lines to the site to serve it at industrial levels. Frankfurt Power and Light is also able to serve the electrical needs of an industrial development in this location, including a data center without issue. There's a zoning map on this page that just highlights in yellow the acreage involved in the site and then shows you the industrial on one side and the ag on the other. And then there's also a second picture there showing a floodplain. I would note it appears that the floodplain ends at the railroad. It does not. The study ended at the railroad. Water does not stop and it is a flat line. It's just the state's funding. They didn't go any further than that. So when we run into these, they have to be sent to the state, and the state first has to look at them and model them and then tell us what the size, shape, and elevations are for that water before we can proceed figuring out what can happen locally. On the next page, there's a series of pictures for the board showing the petition site looking south from 300, looking west from 300, west from 100, and southeast from 100. And you can see the transmission lines, the substation, the railroad, and those houses across those pictures. So in terms of request analysis, there are 5 criteria which the Area Planning Commission and the Commissioners should pay reasonable regard to in the evaluation of a rezoning request. For the Area Planning Commission, it is our primary criteria of conversation. For the County Commissioners, it is one of a much broader range of topics they're allowed to consider as they work through their decision. They're not bound by the same planning regulations that we are. So the first item is the most recently adopted comprehensive plan. The Washington Township Future Land Use Map in the 2012 Clinton County Comprehensive Plan describes this township as having a great diversity of land uses. The city of Frankfort crosses parts of the township, and much of the east and south parts are within the areas designated for Frankfort's future development. On this side of town, that development growth is anticipated to be industrial and commercial in nature to a great extent. This site is directly adjacent to the corporate line, and it has railroad, so it is the next phase growth would be desired and anticipated to occur as the industrial park expands. It is also within the TIF district where future development is desirable and expected. Sewer and water are available, and all land adjacent to the site to the south and west is already zoned industrial, so it would be an expansion of the district for growth, not a spot zoning. The location is appropriate for industrial zoning in terms of surrounding zoning and location. The remaining discussion point regarding the comprehensive plan, however, is if the infrastructure is ready, or if there is a plan to make it ready concurrently for an expansion of the industrial park at this scale all at once. There are several comprehensive plan goals and objectives relevant to the site being rezoned for industrial development. Natural Resources Goal 1, Objective 2 states to provide better drainage within the county, and the action steps further note to discourage development with drainage problems until overall drainage solutions are implemented and to strictly enforce the Clinton County Drainage Ordinance. Natural Resources Goal 2, Objective 3 echoes this again, calling to improve drainage within the county and specifically under Action Step 3 to require all developers to provide adequate stormwater drainage improvements and easements for the properties, skipping a few words, of appropriate size to serve the potential development both on and off site. Land Use Goal 4 states to promote high-quality industrial development that complements the community, and Objective 1 under that goal states to locate industrial development along highways, railroads, and other forms of infrastructure. Action Step 1 under that further states to design all industrial development to be compatible with adjacent development in terms of size, buffering, screening, etc. Economic Development Goal 3, which talks about identifying specific areas for industrial development. Objective 1, which specifically notes that the State Route 28 corridor, which this is along, is the primary economic corridor for industry in Clinton County. Action Step 5 notes that we should encourage additional industrial sites with railroad access. The comprehensive plan also encourages using zoning standards to separate or buffer varying uses with different intensities. So as we work through the relevant parts of the comprehensive plan, the site is appropriate for industrial development in terms of location and proximity to light uses and zoning. It has a railroad along 50% of it and other industrial development as well. There's no issues with sewer, water, or electric capacity for the site. There are, however, unique drainage concerns due to county infrastructure and floodplain that may be addressable but are not yet addressed. Additionally, if the industrial park in this timeline is to be expanded, the roads do need to be of adequate size and type to serve those uses. 100 north between 300 west and 450 west at this point in time is not sufficiently improved for commercial and industrial use, and there is no information provided for addressing this that has been discussed with staff or submitted. 2 of the adjacent homes are legal non-conforming in the industrial district to the south, but there are 4 other homes to the north, which the site abuts or partially surrounds, that are not already in or surrounded by industrial land, and the developer has not provided information about how they would plan to mitigate or otherwise address potential effects on those residential occupants, either as the industrial park expands outward. And pardon me, I'm just going to take a sip before I get. Okay, so item 2 that we should take reasonable with regard to is the current conditions of the character of structure and uses in each district. So the requested district, light industrial, does seem fitting because it is directly adjacent to the railroad and to the existing industrial park, as well as the corporate boundary of Frankfort. It is within the TIF district, which I've mentioned that a few times. The TIF district is a district in which development that occurs, those developers directly pay for improvement of roads and other things that are needed, rather than it coming out of taxpayers' pockets. So those districts are set over areas that are designated for future development at some point and allow for the burden of costs to be transferred to developers rather than to the general public. So just so you're not wondering what that is. Anyway, that's an area the county anticipates growth occurring with existing industrial sites to the south. This is the next tier north that we do expect to develop. It has a large substation and 2 different higher voltage electric lines crossing it. The 2 residences to the south are already zoned industrial and have been since at least 93, possibly 77. 50 North has historically been the northern edge of the 1970s industrial park, and then when ConAgra went in, that first expansion went north of 50. On the north side, one of the houses was replaced with something newer in 2017, and staff did ask them if they were sure they wanted to do that, given that they were eventually going to be surrounded by industrial at this location. In 2024, there was a rezoning hearing for another one of the houses, and it was mentioned again there that industrial business growth and zoning is anticipated on this land at some point in the future, and the houses on the edge of this are likely going to be in a transition or mixed-use area where there will be some sort of industrial or business on one side of them, and then agricultural or housing on the other side as Frankfurt continues to grow outward. 3, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted. The ground is zoned agriculturally, it's currently vacant and farmed. 50% of its border touches industrial zoning and uses. The other 50% borders agricultural and conforming residential uses. It is adjacent to the industrial park, and again, within that TIF district fronting the railroad. This field is not the best place for housing development, given the high voltage transmission lines, existing substation, adjacent railroad, and neighboring industrial park. Given the adjacent industrial park, it's also tough to argue that farming is the highest and best use. Sooner or later, it is likely that some sort of industrial or heavy commercial development is the best use for this land, especially given the rail frontage and neighboring industrial park. In fact, staff would feel that there is actually some merit to discussing if this land is appropriate for a use that does not need rail frontage, as we have a limited number of sites where rail spurs can be provided for heavier density industrial, and this land might better suit a more intense use that needs rail for shipping, because we can't just put rail anywhere in the community, whereas things that don't need rail can be located in a variety of locations. 4, the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. So the proposed plan is very preliminary. It does not include information about many components of development, and I would notice that is typical for site plans at the rezoning stage, not atypical. In general, the property values for the petition site and industrial grounds to the site would not, or to the south, would not be negatively affected. Farm fields will also not be negatively affected in terms of value, as land adjacent will potentially increase due to potentially being the next stage of development after that. The houses nearby, particularly the one closest to the existing substation, where there are no trees or space for buffering at all, and the lot is very narrow, may see land value increase as potential industrial, but as residential homes, if not appropriately mitigated against the effects of the adjacent development, they may have challenges in getting the same residential value they have now when they sell. Even though this area has been long anticipated to become industrial or business, any decision should take into account how to best mitigate the effect for the homes that are there so they can be relocated or otherwise maintain a similar residential atmosphere, regardless of the new neighboring use, and have some confidence in resale value when they're sold. 5, responsible growth and development. Growth of the industrial park outward along the State Road 28 corridor is what has been planned for decades. It will expand north and south of the existing development as the industrial park grows. Developing adjacent land to expand the existing industrial park is preferable to starting new industrial parks in other parts of the county. Adding more industrial land adjacent to the railroad also makes sense. That said, the outer transitional edge of the industrial park at this point may not be the right place for really intense manufacturing uses, such as large factories that produce significant odor or have expansive unscreened outdoor storage. Consideration needs to be given to be sure the land is ready for development of any kind and that it can be drained and has sufficient road access for trucks. The fact that 100 North does not have any plan at all to be made sufficient for such traffic is an issue that needs to be addressed in the conversation of whether this is the right timing for expanding the industrial park. It would not take much of an increase in traffic for that one-lane gravel road to break down, negatively affecting both commercial and residential sites that have access off of it. If there's no plan to upgrade that road to handle commercial and industrial traffic, then rezoning the land that fronts 100 North to expand the industrial park, well appropriate in terms of zoning patterns and comprehensive plan goals, should wait until such time as the road is being or has been upgraded to be appropriate for heavier uses so that the infrastructure can handle whatever development may come in terms of industrial uses both initially and in the future. Attention should also be given to how to best mitigate the effect of the growth on the conforming homes that sit adjacent regardless of what user ends up on the land. So consequently, staff recommendation, the applicant has requested a continuance for 2 months, which would require a waiver of court rules we are not capable of even hearing tonight. to allow public and elected officials a little more time to learn about and examine questions. As staff, the feeling is that cases should be handled officially once filed, and traditionally the board only uses continuances when they need more information that is specific to planning and may make a difference in how individuals view the merits of a particular application in deciding how to vote. State law indicates that in general, hearing cases should not be drug out by a planning commission as a means of delaying rendering a decision, which is part of why there are maximum time limits on the stages of the process, so that both objectors and applicants can have confidence in figuring out where something's going and being able to respond to it. If elected officials want more time, they do have 90 days to act once a recommendation is forwarded to them, or they can deny while giving feedback as to why the developer is being denied so they can address those issues that they wish to refile in the future. If an applicant wants more time, they do have the option to withdraw, then refile in the future when they are fully prepared. That said, in this case, there are some specific questions and concerns that do seem relevant in determining what kind of recommendation based on land use, infrastructure, and the comprehensive plan should be sent to the county commissioners to consider as part of their rationale as they make a decision on this rezoning request. Staff would recommend continuing for 1 month as board rules allow, because the information given is not adequate to be sure the timing is right to expand the industrial park, or to be sure that the right list of commitments on the rezoning have been developed to guard against potential users that might end up there if the primary user doesn't, and put some boundaries on what can end up on that land if it doesn't get used in whatever way the commissioners believe it might be when they first hear it. So staff would recommend, if continuing, that the applicant is recommended to first work with the state to determine the location and intent to work in and relocate the floodway and the process required, as well as the surveyor's office and the drainage board, to develop and commit to a plan that the drainage board believes they can approve to address the county's infrastructure on the site that allows for development to work and lays out any new easements needed for relocated infrastructure. Additionally, determining if there will be wet or dry ponds and if the airport will approve the method chosen will be important to that drainage plan, and we don't have that information either to know if the airport will be comfortable with the potential for wildlife crossing near where the runways are. Two, recommending the applicant bring back a plan for how 100 North will be approved from 450 to 300 to make it adequate to serve industrial zoning in this timeline, so that any use that might locate on this land could use it without causing the infrastructure and the roads to break down for others who may need that road, as well as for the truck traffic to start to use on this property. Three, to develop a set plan or set of plans, because each of the 3 adjacent housing areas, there's one on the corner, there's one kind of in the middle with 3 sides, and then there is a legal non-conforming, which while zoned industrial is still used residentially and should have some mitigation. So we're requesting that the applicant bring back plans or sets of plans to address concerns regarding effects for those homes that are being abutted. Right now, there's no mention in the application of the homes, and the site plan shows one surrounded on 3 sides with nothing between the house and the industrial structures. 4, while not directly on the rezoning site, the site plan shows that a new substation to the south will go in the existing industrial zoning district, which is not directly part of the rezoning conversation. But it is presumably important to successful use of the site for the user that is currently bringing the application. That plan shows that the 2 legal non-conforming homes will be removed and replaced by a substation. As a planner, from a planning perspective, knowing we anticipate industrial and commercial here long-term, removing those homes does match the long-term plans, and the substation is expected in an industrial district for larger sites, but there is no information in the application on this, and it does relate to the site as well as to what the surrounding uses will be if rezoned. The staff wonders if the substation will be applicant owned and there's purchase agreements for those homes, or if it will be utility owned and the utility has committed to acquire the homes, and thus the applicant knows that will be the neighboring use. And then will it be pulling off the existing high voltage lines that already are on the site, or will new lines be required from another direction? If the homes are not being acquired by either the utility or the applicant, and this is an oversight on the site plan that somebody just drew quickly, then the plan needs to be revised to reflect that. And that then affects things on the rezoning site because that substation is going to have to move somewhere else. Obviously, if the homes are being acquired, then no buffering or mitigation will be needed for them because they don't exist, so that relates to some of the other points. but regardless, it would affect possible commitments sent to the legislative body for consideration with the plan commission recommendation, should the legislative body choose to rezone. So moving beyond that, I would note that if the board does not wish to continue to ask for more information on infrastructure, then at this point in time, staff would recommend sending a more nuanced negative recommendation that includes an explanation to the legislative body explaining that the comprehensive plan does support the rezoning, but the plan commission does not believe the drainage and road infrastructure is ready to support industrial development yet, and was unable to determine if the industrial user has a plan to mitigate uses that are less compatible with what they are coming up to. And because of the location, the size of this, even with a negative recommendation, staff would recommend sending a list of recommended commitments to the legislative body so that should they choose to rezone it, they have a starting point to come back and work with plan commission staff to put some guardrails on what may or may not be on the site. So staff would feel that commitments should potentially include limiting some potential uses, perhaps requiring something regarding neighboring homes, adding some restrictions or expectations to guarantee a quality development with adequate buffering, screening, amenities, and connectivity. Right now, staff doesn't feel that there's enough information to be sure that we're even recommending the correct commitments to draft, to send with a positive recommendation, or even in an advisory capacity to be sure that we've covered everything. If the board chooses to continue, then there's time to kind of hash that out. But if they don't want to, then they will need to try to work out with staff at least some kind of list and recommendation to the commissioners on what kind of commitments should be considered. If the board at the commissioner's level decides not to deny. Based on what we do know so far, staff would recommend the following points to begin to consider as commitments as a starting point. First, limiting allowable uses to ban things that would usually have passed to approval in a light industrial district that may not be appropriate on the outer edge of the industrial park, such as heavy manufacturing, scrap metal processing facilities, and solid waste transfer processing facilities. Two, requiring pedestrian paths and sidewalks be incorporated around the site perimeter from the railroad 100 north, around the north and the west to the railroad 300 west. Three, no on-street outdoor storage. Four, a prohibition combined with the zoning that no wells can be drilled on the site, nor can water be produced originating from the site. Any attempt to do so would void the rezoning and make the use illegal. Any existing wells must be properly abandoned and closed, and all water supply to the site must come from the municipal water supply. Staff does think other commitments should be potentially added, clarifying things such as but not limited to neighboring home mitigation, county infrastructure relocation, and new easements, and road improvements, but there's just not enough information to be confident as to what to ask future owners to commit to. And staff would note that if an applicant is unwilling to commit themselves and future owners, then staff definitely would recommend a negative recommendation, as you cannot force an applicant to accept commitments. They do have to do so voluntarily and record those as binding on themselves and all future property owners. And I think that concludes staff. I apologize for the length. It was a lot to analyze.
Thank you, Red. We're still having it. Thank you, Red, for staff report. At this time, I'm going to follow our normal procedure. And that's
Okay, hang on. I was partly at fault for that. Dan, we're having trouble hearing. Can you move the microphone closer to you? It seems to work over here.
no, no.
Oh, yes.
All right, we're going to follow our normal procedure. I've asked you to kind of avoid the applause, things like that. It takes up time, and I'd like to go home tonight early. But I will ask the applicants to come forward tonight and make their presentation. That's our normal way of doing things. After that, we will ask for the audience to participate. I do have a list here. I believe everyone who would like to speak is highlighted in yellow. There are 19 people who would like to come forward. So after the application, the applicants give their view of what this is going to look like and the purpose for the rezone, we will take public comment after that. So it's all yours.
Would you like us to address the continuance at this point?
It's up to you what you want to address, but if you would come to the mic, and then we seem to be learning. Last time we were in here, we had a double the time of people hearing, but if you like devour that mic, it appears that everyone can hear you. So if you wouldn't mind leaning into it.
How's that? Is that all right? Did I hear that? All right? Thank you, members of the commission. My name is John Moore. My address is 9294 North Meridian Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46260. Here on behalf of your petitioner, Logix Realty LLC. With me in the crowd, I have Doug Swain with Logix Realty there in the front row of the jury box, and then Sam Young, my office. And so I'm going to first address the continuance request, and we obviously understand that given the numbers that we're not entitled to a 60-day continuance, so we take that off the board. I'm not asking you for that, but we do think that a 30-day continuance is appropriate. And then that might be even after we hear the public comment. I understand we've got a lot of folks here, and I appreciate them taking the time to come out, and we want to respect their time as well. But as you can see, it's a very thorough staff report. There are several issues we're working through here, and this is a big project. It's a unique project. It's not one you see every day. I mean, the zoning is, we're zoning it light industrial, but we've come forward here with this potential data center use. And so there's really two reasons that we're requesting the continuance. The first is, as pointed out in the staff report, there's questions that remain for drainage, improvements to County Road 100 North, which I've driven. Definitely is going to have to be approved if you're going to put any industrial traffic up there. Buffer and screening for the surrounding residences. We'd be looking at talking to the surrounding property owners and giving some buffer and screening beyond what's required in the ordinance. The ordinance would require some buffering, but we think it'd be appropriate to have more buffering than what's required in the ordinance. Last thing was mentioned, commitments. Limiting the number of uses here. I think that's something we can sit down with the staff and say, all right, here's the item of uses that you believe are appropriate or inappropriate for this site, so that we would agree to limit uses that will be permitted. We'd also agree to maybe some development standard requirements, something along the lines of, if you're ever going to have an entrance up on 100 North, that's got to be improved to the county engineer standards, something along those lines. Those are things that are still left to be hashed out as pointed out by staff, and that's the reason for their request for the 30-day continuance, and we would certainly agree with that. And then the last reason or basis for the continuance is last week, Mr. Swain met with Partners in Progress here. That was on August 27th, and there was a request made at that meeting that he hold a community meeting with these folks in the building, maybe some others, so that people can come out, ask questions, get more answers, and so they have agreed to do that. Obviously, between August 27th, they haven't had time to do that, but they would look to do that sometime this month as well. So those are the reasons for the 30-day continuance requests. We would, if it's the board's pleasure, listen to the public comments and then continue after that. If the board would rather just not have any continuance at all, Mr. Swain can speak about the project.
Well, gentlemen, it's my opinion that this community has known about this now for a few months. I think it could have been handled much differently with them addressing the public and those in the concerned area. So I personally am not in favor of continuance. I think I told you that earlier in the meeting. I prefer to go ahead with the full hearing and move this on to the commissioner's table. So, but I'm just one vote. So it's up to you gentlemen. You have any thoughts you'd like to express?
Well, if Mr. Swain does come to the PIP meeting and talk to everybody, is there more information that has been given, more information than we have now? Because there's very little, this board has very little information to even vote on.
Yeah, there needs to be more information pulled from the staff report. I think that the staff report is very enlightening on what information would like to be provided, and those are the items that they're working on. I think a lot of these items that have been questioned, we're at the rezoning stage. Typically, we would do a lot of this at the development plan stage, but we can go ahead and look at some of those things since those questions are being brought up. I mean, honestly, right now, there's no ultimate user for this site. There's no actual site plan for the site. And we're talking about drainage. We don't know where the buildings and roads are going to be. Those are things we usually do at development plan approval when we do the engineering, drainage and so forth. Similar to what they did when they did the ConAgra site across the street to handle that. So what Mr. Swain has agreed to do in seeing some of these questions is to go ahead and incur some of those expenses, do some preliminary engineering type discussions that normally would have waited to development review, but to go ahead and so that everyone can be more informed, more comfortably informed. That's the type of things he's looking to do and the request for.
I also sit on the county council, and of course, we're going to welcome any kind of development. I mean, that's what we need. We need revenue. And for me, right now, it's kind of like, man, this doesn't look like anything that I would vote for right now. I probably would be like Dan and just say, yeah, I'm not in favor of this as it sits. Can I?
If I had to make any decision based on the information that I have or don't have, there's no way I could support something like this because I think we're being asked to just.
Kevin, can you eat that mic? Sorry, you could,
That's what you're like.
if you could start taking over, the catch to begin.
I just don't think that there's been enough information given, and it doesn't give a good perception to the public, and I feel like that we need to. I want the hearing to continue. I agree with Dan, but I just don't think that we have enough information at all, and I think that what we're talking about now should have been talked about months ago.
I agree with it. And I agree with this, so any aspect of, it's just one of these things we're trying to rush into something, we're not ready for. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And, it's one of these things, but we gotta get it right to begin with, so we have no issues.
Is there a consensus to move forward with the applicants telling us about their project?
You want a motion to do that?
I don't think you need a motion, if you just indicate you want to.
Please go ahead with it.
Oh, Mr. Swain.
Well, thank you. My name is Doug Swain. I reside at 11339 Avant Lane in Cincinnati, Ohio, 45249. I have a business by the name of Logistics Property Group. We are a partner in an entity called Logics Realty, which is before Planning Commission tonight. That entity was formed to go out and acquire land specifically for data center development. And I've been involved in industrial development and similar developments across the region for over 30 years. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate all the citizens that came in this evening. I do appreciate their time. I am sensitive and appreciate their comments, forthcoming comments. And thank you, Liz, and the rest of the Planning Commission staff for your thoughtful report. I'll get up here and tell a little bit about, hopefully kind of at least address some of the questions that I have heard over time from citizens that we've spoken to and from others in the community and from potentially really others in even other locales with regard to data centers, because data centers are a new product type essentially. I mean, they are fitting into the industrial classification because that's the closest thing to fit them in terms of what they look like, in terms of what they do, but they really are completely different. And if you look at even if you listen to the staff report in terms of the industrial that eventually was planned and should go up into that region, this is about the cleanest, most simplest form of industrial that you could possibly imagine for any site. And let me speak, and you'll have your time to get up here and speak. We're talking about essentially a building that will house computer servers. And they use some power, correct, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Most of them today don't use water. That's a misnomer that's out there. So we can talk about that as well. They don't emit pollution. There's no truck traffic. And they attract employees, which are essentially the employees of today and going future. They are, in our case, what we have modeled is about 40% higher than the state average employee at $85,000 per year. Now that, I would say, might be conservative if you look at some of the other surrounding developments that have gone on, and then going to be modeled that way. But let me just go on and just talk about it. We've got a smaller project going on in Hamilton, Ohio, which is very similar to these circumstances, similar in that the local municipality owns the power company. We're looking at a site there, and I will tell you down there, and that they love us down there. And they love us for really one reason. I mean, they understand all the things about the data center, but, their economic development person, I was in front of their planning commission last week who wants some entitlement matters. And they said, we understand that, this project will bring employees in here. And it'll bring higher wage, technology-driven employees that we would love to have in this community. And I said, yes, I understand that. And for some other reasons as well, income to the utility company, et cetera, they really enjoy it. So it's always interesting to me how, some people are hesitant to support it or maybe have, but I understand why there are questions about it, and I'll try to address some of them here this evening. And we still are planning to have a larger question and answer session for the public. We want to do that. We wanted to do it from the very beginning. And I'm hopeful that we'll bring some other experts in and give some other people some ability to engage with some people that are involved in data centers. We may bring some other community leaders from some other communities in to have discussions to let them know about their experience. And we'll try to at least educate and provide as many facts and answers as we can to any questions that are out there in the community. So, these sites, they obviously aren't smokestack sites. I mean, they don't have pollution associated with it. It's not manufacturing. Essentially, it's computer racks that are driven. No noise. There's about 65 decibels. That's widely published or less, and that's about the sound of the traffic as it goes by as you're standing on the roadway at 10 feet away. There's not excessive light. We may have had some discussions that we obviously are not going to exceed the ordinance there. We don't need a lot of light. There's a security, issue with these buildings, and there certainly will need to be some immediate light in the area, but there's not a lot of light, even though inside of these, and intuitively you might think there's a lot of light because they're burning off a lot of energy, but that's not the case. As I mentioned before, not much water. They operate under a separate power agreement, and they really, and what I'll talk a little bit about too is in terms of the tax revenue, this is especially significant as it relates to the state of Indiana. Because of those Senate Bill 1 and the tax law changes there, the county stands to lose a significant amount of money from the property tax changes. And I'm sure it's a topic of discussion with the leaders in the city and the county as to what is the plan. And the best plan really is to generate businesses that encourage housing or generate businesses that can encourage funds to stimulate the housing. This area is in a TIF district, giving the county control of the money that is generated from the property taxes here. And that can be used to fund any number of things. It can be used to fund infrastructure. It can be used to fund things that would incentivize home developers, apartment developers, other things to drive housing, which would be desperately needed to make up for the tax changes and the law implications of the city. And I think ultimately, some of the leaders of the city may be judged on this because as you go forward, there has to be a plan. Either otherwise, you're either going to have to cut services or you're going to have to increase taxes. There's no other way. So you drive businesses in here that can support that infrastructure. Let's talk about the power, because this power is the most regulated, one of the most regulated industries in the country. You cannot, as a high voltage power or any really high power, just go connect to the grid and expect that you're going to be served power from your local utility company. And especially when we talk about higher voltage requirements like these are, this is operated under a completely separate power agreement. For this facility, it's dedicated for this facility. The line that will come into this facility is a dedicated line. Any costs that are associated with bringing that line or putting infrastructure in place to serve this development will be borne either directly by the developer or through this power agreement, which is usually a 10 or 15-year commitment to the power. And it's just like if I go in and lease a building and the landlord says, I'm going to build out an office space for you, well, the rent's going to be a little bit higher. It's no different. So these are not costs that are borne by the citizens of this community. They're costs that will be borne ultimately by the user of that power. It's not going to, it's a regulated, an organization called MISO regulates it for this vicinity. And their purpose in regulating that is to make sure that power that's been committed by the utility company doesn't impact the power that's being delivered already to other businesses and residential users. So it's somewhat of a cumbersome process to go through that, but it's what happens and what the regulatory commission requires in order to ensure that there is smooth regulation with regard to the delivery of power in this country. And that's why some locations, areas where there are heavy developments in data centers, are not able to get power. I've heard some different examples for Ohio and Virginia and power examples over there. Virginia isn't really a good example. To give you an example, we're talking about 1 million square feet or so of data center product. So Virginia, within the next year, will have roughly about 100 million square feet of data center product. So that's 100 times what we're talking about in this community. That's a completely different scenario. It's a completely different situation. And sure, they've got other concerns and things that they've got to work through in the community. Ohio is behind that in terms of size, but there was some things that were done to the grid overall in Ohio that were upgrades well before the data center groups came in there. And that has increased the rates in that state. It's an unregulated rate. It's an unregulated state, so for electrical power delivery. So that needs to be made up somewhere. But that really didn't have to do directly with the power companies. We really had to do upgrades that took place well before a lot of those groups came in there. Also, I want to make note that our development, our project, proposed project, will donate ground to the city of Frankfurt, which will enable them to build a infrastructure that will then enable them to be able to attract additional manufacturing. That was an important piece of our discussions early on. So we feel like what we are doing is not only helping our immediate project, but we also think we're providing additional infrastructure to help the city of Frankfurt. And I will say that that will be the city of Frankfurt that delivers much of the power. And we're still working out some of that as you go further north, because the further north you get, as you get into that, that is a different regulatory electrical transmission service area. And I've heard listened in on some meetings and heard some debate about, well, these other utility companies can come in and provide utilities and it may not even necessarily be Frankfurt, but that's absolutely not true. In the state of Indiana, the electrical service provider is able to provide service into their service area. Other utility companies cannot infringe upon that unless there's mutual agreement. So just to clear up a few things that we've talked about here a little bit. Let's talk about the water for a minute. Boy, there's a lot of information about water out there and how much these data centers consume water. And I will tell you that the early ones especially, and by early I mean even as recent as a year ago, consumed a lot of water. I mean, you've read about it, and everybody's read about it, and they consume an enormous amount of water. And there still are some that do have water requirements, but I would tell you that most of the ones today do not consume any more water generally than what would be used for domestic and fire suppression. And part of that is due to the sensitivity in the communities about the water usage, about the scarcity of water. It also is due to the fact that technology has driven them there, because these CPU units and these cages and these racks, as they've gotten more and more dense, they do throw off heat, and as they've thrown off more heat, it's harder to satisfy and cool those and keep them consistently cool to run and operate by just flowing a lot of water through there. So they've come up with closed loop systems that don't utilize all the water and that are better able to cool the systems. We can provide some additional information on that. We can talk about a commitment not to use the water up there, other than what's nominally used, but certainly not in the context of having to use 1 million or 2 million gallons a day or something. So that's a big thing, because the water sensitive, even though Clinton County has a lot of water, but there's something else to talk about too in terms of as we go forward and discuss some of the commitments and so forth that might be made. We can talk about economic development. I mentioned Senate Bill number 1. What is the plan? We have hired a study by Genovis, and the city and the county have done their own studies, or this county is in the process of doing their own economic study with the inputs that we provided and coming up with their own conclusions. But our study, we figured for that phase that we're talking about here today, it would generate about 170 full-time employees. It's not included this hundreds that would be on a temporary basis. It's not including and temporary, I'm not talking about only construction and engineering and other services. There are also groups that may come and install the racking, come install the CPUs, come install some of the systems that are in that building. And that really number is not pulled out of the air. That really was, we hired Genovis because Genovis has a reputable track record. They have represented numerous data center companies, so including some in northern Indiana. And so they carefully looked at, how many employees each of these different groups, will employ. And even if you look at some of the surrounding data center developments that have been going in front of similar plan commissions, the employees are somewhat similar. I mean, there is a range, but we believe, and through the groups that we've been working with and talked to, that this number is an accurate number. This will represent in that 150 acres or so about $1.5 billion of investment. Again, this is information that is Genovis validated. It's the same information that we, in talking with other users, operators, developers in the region, have also came to the same conclusion. Some people have different buckets of where those costs reside. Some people count the electrical substation as part of the building shell, for example. So you may get one group that says, I'm building and our shell is costing X, and but maybe they aren't including the substation, maybe they aren't. But at the end of the day, it represents about $2,000 a foot. When you include, all of the costs it costs to build the facility, as well as all the interior components that go into. It represents, and we looked at this, and we can look at a number of different ways, but over the next 25 years, that will represent about $265 million in gross property tax revenue over the next 25 years. So it is a significant investment in the area, and it's area that flows into, again, a TIF, which is controlled by the county, and which can be used to stimulate other growth. And again, this is a building that's going to sit over there and really not do much of anything except, generate property taxes, quite frankly, and high-wage employees. There's a $6.3 million local income tax creation from this development. The way, just simply in high level, we obviously have made available these numbers, but certainly make ourselves available to discuss them further as to how we came up with the assumptions that we made and Genovis made. We assumed about 35% of the overall employees will reside in the county. We think the other ones will come in from other areas, but some of that is a function of not having all of the places to live. There is a strong incentive for some of the operators in this facility to live close by, because they are on call essentially 24 hours a day. If something happens and one of those computer servers go down, then that means somebody doesn't get their Facebook or doesn't get their ChatGPT spit out quickly, and they're going to have to get over to that facility, and they're going to have to access it to be able to service it. They don't want to live far away. They want to live close, and that is the experience that we've seen in other counties and cities where these have gone. I'll talk briefly about tax incentives also, because I think there's certainly been a lot of discussion about that. The primary tax incentives for this project is a state-granted exemption for the sales and use tax associated with the equipment that goes into these facilities. Because the equipment is so expensive, and you're putting such an investment in, that has different states have looked at that because they want to incentivize these groups to come in because they understand the employment, they understand the investment, they want the investment. So they've incentivized these groups by giving them the exemption. But that is a sales tax exemption. It is a state sales tax exemption. That money doesn't go to the local locale here, it goes to the state. Okay, so the state, that is a tax exemption that we've seen in many states across the country. They did it in Indiana to spur development here, specifically for data centers, and it's out there. It's applied for on a case-by-case basis. The user goes in and applies that case. We have not approached, nor will we directly, anything about local property tax abatements or personal property tax abatements. What I have mentioned is these groups, they will come in and ask for it likely because they're putting such a large lopsided investment into the community that in order to help incentivize it and make the numbers a little bit better for them, given all the investment, that they likely will ask for it. But if you look at the numbers and the numbers I just quoted, I think even assume a standard abatement that is typically given for an industrial product, which only expands 10 years, but is usually phased in, so it's 50% for 10 years. So as an example, that really, at the end of the day, doesn't cut down the property tax revenue by that much. But at the end of the day, it's strictly up to the city to decide if they want to grant that. You don't have to grant that tax abatement. That's not something that's being, given as a given to look at and improve this development. The comments from the staff report, I appreciate listening to that, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness, and thank you again for that. He brought up several things when we looked at rezoning this, and certainly we are doing it from a conceptual basis, and we're looking at it from the standpoint of not everything is put into place. We want to conceptually understand that if data centers, if the county agrees that data centers can be developed here, then we would go and try to drill into some of the more specifics of that. And at that time, we would have a user committed. We've had discussions and in discussions with multiple groups that are interested. So I think, and as Liz even reiterated, submitting a conceptual plan is not unusual. Most of the time we develop, not most of it, sometimes we have, sometimes we haven't, but we've done the conceptual site plan because you really don't know exactly where those buildings will sit until you get in there and do civil design and do a lot of studies and make sure that, you're not spending tens of thousands of dollars or something that ultimately can't be zoned. So we have done some preliminary work, and we certainly will do some more. The drainage, to me, is one we certainly want to make sure that we work closely with our civil groups to make sure that the drainage can be satisfied. I'm confident that it can be. I believe that's a drainage tile. We were able to relocate it relatively easily for the ConAgra project. As you look at the map and it goes down, it goes right through where the ConAgra is. I don't believe it's a regulated waterway. However, those changes are going back and forth, quite frequently lately. So, we certainly will do that and certainly make sure that we do that. We are willing to commit on a preliminary basis some time, effort, and dollars to make sure that we get that right. And we certainly would not have even done what we've done today if we thought that was, if that was a creek there, for example, we probably, in a regulated waterway, we probably wouldn't do it. We probably would look at this a little differently. But even if it was, you could leave it alone and develop around it. I mean, it's what we typically do in those circumstances. The surrounding property owners, as we said, we held a meeting with some of the property owners a month or so ago, and we want to be very sensitive to the property owners that surround there. We have discussed with all of them potential offers for the property, and even subsequent to that meeting, we discussed, some of the timing, especially as we looked at maybe a smaller acreage of land. And I will say that we certainly want to make it like the residents are up in that area. There was never an intent not to. I will say if to the extent that as an interim step, or maybe if they look at moving further on or what have you, if the project were to be approved, and even for the surrounding areas, just generally for the community, these facilities are generally burned and landscaped and secure. So these buildings sit back from the roadway. You know, the ordinance in the county, I believe, is for every foot of height, 2 feet back or the setback. They likely will exceed that, as Johnny alluded to, just from a security standpoint. And we can mount those, we can put some landscaping in. That's what, you know, we've typically seen in some other areas. So it's not as dense as, and it's not as if, you know, you have industrial buildings sitting right up to the curbway, which in industrial development, you know, you have low wage rents and everything else, you're very cost conscious, you want to maximize the site. It's different here. There's a security component because there's so much money being spent into the facility, they want to secure it. And the result of that really is a nicer looking area. It's landscaped, it's mound, it's set back from the site. The County 100 road improvements, we can certainly talk about that. I will say that because of the security, typically, except for some fire entrances, they typically look for a single point of entry and access because there usually will be a security guard or gate there, so that people aren't kind of lingering, you know, have access in between these buildings with billions of dollars of computer hardware. So, but to the extent that the County Road 100 comes into play there, and maybe even just as emergency or fire access, I think that can be improved. I don't see an issue with that at all. I think that's really about it that I had in my notes. Again, we, you know, appreciate the comments, we appreciate the time, looking forward to hearing the other comments, and the other comments I'll be taking notes, and certainly will try to address them during subsequent public meetings. I am always available to come up at any time with anybody in this room or in the city or this county, and have a meeting about this, and talk about it, answer questions, have a cup of coffee, buy a beer, it doesn't matter to me. We're just working on a number of these. I'm involved in some trade organizations where we're talking about, it's a relatively new product type, so I understand there's a lot of questions about them, and the best we can do is just try to clarify and answer any questions that people have about them. But I can tell you, just and this isn't just with the group in Clinton County, you know, I provide other things too, and other communities and so forth. I just don't really view, from my shoes and where I sit, as a lot of the information that's being out there and a lot of it that's of concern with people is really that factual or that realism. I mean, I think the way to look at this is it is a newer. I mean, data centers have been around for years. I mean, they are not really new, but the way that they are building these newer facilities with AI, learning, training, the new CPUs and everything are newer. But I will tell you the advantage of that, because if you look back 5 years ago, or you know, what have you, they were going and retrofitting old office buildings, where you had the Bitcoin mining guys come in, and those guys you don't want in your community. This is completely different than Bitcoin mining. Those guys set up shop, and they knew they were only going to be there for a couple of years. The groups that we're talking about coming in are all well-capitalized, solid companies, some of which you recognize the names, some of which you won't, but in any event, they're worth billions of dollars in market cap. They're signing agreements, long-term agreements for 10, 15 plus years for the energy. They're not going anywhere. I mean, that energy is 50 million plus a year going to these facilities. So, you know, I think my role is, you know, hopefully trying to educate the best I can as to what the real facts are in regard to these facilities. And at the end of the day, you know, some people may still not want them, but I think when you look at the alternative, and especially in this situation, you look at some of the tax implications, especially given those areas of tip and so forth up there, I just don't know how you can not at least give it some consideration for the community, because it really is not an invasive product type for the community that could really offer some benefit to allow the community to grow in a thoughtful way. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Swain. At this time, I would ask anyone who would like to speak in favor of this project, come to the microphone. one at a time, please.
Dan, sorry to interrupt you, but I do have two comments staff received from the public that I need to present.
All right, go ahead and do that
Like,
first.
Written comments ahead of tonight's meeting, both of which were sent onto the board. So I'm gonna take these one at a time. First, we received a comment from Shane Alford. Did all of you as board members receive that? Were you able to read it in full? Okay, so given that, instead of having to read it fully to the record, I'm gonna summarize it. So Shane Alford is one of the homeowners in the middle of the proposed project. He requests that the plan commission and the county commissioners consider stipulations to not just be built around, but rather to look at perhaps a way in which their value can be preserved or they can be purchased out. He specifically notes he's not opposed to selling his property, but needs a price that allows him to find another comparable location and deal with the inconvenience of moving. He mainly sums that up by requesting that any plan that's approved would include buying the properties that once remain next to the data center, to give them some kind of way out of there. I would note for the plan commission has no power or ability to bind anything fiscal or to have conversations of logic based on fiscal components. But the county commissioners certainly have the ability to discuss that, and the comment was received either way, and there's nothing that prevents me from presenting it. So I wanted to sum that up. The second letter was received actually today, I think, from Zach Northrop and forwarded to the board. Did all of you receive that and have a chance to read it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So then to sum that up for the audience, Zach lives at 3279 North Hamilton Road. He is against the rezoning for the data center. He gives 4 reasons. First, he wants to see it preserved as farm ground rather than moving to industrial. Secondly, he has concerns about water supply and what will happen if wells are unable to reach water. Third, he has concerns about electricity and believes that the cost will be the burden of locals. And fourth, he states that he has received no information about abatements that have been promised and has concerns about what abatements may or may not be offered. He then notes in conclusion, he's not against growth and he does support it. It doesn't even sound like he's necessarily against growth in this location, but he does have concerns about this type of facility and requests a no vote to rezone.
Thank you, Liz. This time, I do have a list of people who would like to speak, but I would like to hear from people who are in favor.
Hey guys, you can keep it down so you can hear Dan.
I'd like to have those people speak first. Anyone in favor of this project, please come to the microphone.
If you guys all could be mindful as you speak of like swallowing that thing, it seems like it helps for everyone else to hear, even though it's a little awkward.
I'm definitely a minority. My name is Rhonda White. I've lived most of my life in Frankfurt.
Okay, here.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yeah. My name is Rhonda White. I've lived most of my life in Frankfurt. I am in favor of the board here granting the rezoning permit, because that's what we're doing today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, I've had a little bit of experience with the data centers with the company that I work for. We've been involved. There's about 5 of them going on right now. One in Boone County. I think it's larger than this one. One in Morgan County. One in Hancock County. And one was completed up in St. Joseph County, South Bend, the Amazon Web Services data center. It's my opinion, these data centers are coming. This is not the first, it's definitely not going to be the last. On some of the research that I've done, there are 50 in Indiana right now, as far as data centers. I don't know why we're not going to take advantage of the tax revenue that this is going to bring. The questions, in my opinion, have been addressed as far as water usage, as far as electricity. And I think it would be a huge boon to our economy. I don't think Frankfurt really has grown all that much in the last 40 or 50 years. Certainly not as much as I would think Boone County, those other counties a little closer to Indianapolis. And I can understand why those might be prospering a little more. But I see it as we're being thrown a lifeline. I think this would be huge for.
Excuse me, folks back there, will you please remain silent so that I can hear what
It's making it hard for us to be able to hear.
I think it's a huge boom. I don't see any negatives to it. And I would hope that the board would grant the rezoning.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on to the people on my list here. Not going in any particular order, just the order that the list was given to me.
Dan, do you wish, and there's usually two questions people ask. One, do you wish to set any time limitation? And two, will you allow people to assign their time to others, should they wish to move
I was
together?
getting ready to address that. I am going to request a 3-minute time limit to start with. And if you would like to assign your 3 minutes to someone else to speak, that will be fine, you can do that. And I would ask you to be very respectful of everyone while doing so, and stick to the facts, please, that's before this board. So I would ask that Karen Moskovitz come to the microphone.
Give mine to her.
There's probably a lot of people that give time to me, so if it's possible that we could just accumulate it, maybe I could go towards the end instead of just getting up and down, so it's easier to have.
Would you like to have 5 minutes to do that? To talk to folks, or the designated speaker, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that signed up were intending to give their time to me, so I didn't know how you guys.
Why don't we get the names of all the people that are giving you their time, and then Dan can cross them off on his list, and then know how much time that is total when they get to you on the list.
That was my, thank you, Liz.
So if you're giving time to her, if you would just raise your hand, and then we can kind of work our way through. So, yellow shirt in the front, what's your name?
Sandy Brennan.
Sandy Brennan.
Okay.
Karen Moss.
Just give us a moment to find those.
All right, sounds good. Who else?
Jody Stewart. Jody Stewart. I'm gonna try to count. You all raise your hands, but while he's writing that down, I'm just gonna count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I show 6 people that are giving their time once he gets their names all down. So,
Who else?
Lisa Quintanar.
okay, so it'll be 21 minutes max for her, and then Dan's just gotta track who's off the list, otherwise it gave their time.
I did not see that name on this list on the first go around.
Okay, what's the name we're looking for?
Lisa,
Lisa?
I forgot the last.
I got Lisa, what's the last name?
Quintanar.
Where do you live, or what?
300.
Okay, I think I found you.
Next,
Okay, here's my next one. What's your name?
Tammy McDaniel.
Tammy McDaniel. What road do you live on?
608 West Freeman.
West Freeman. 603 West Freeman. Did you sign in when you came in?
Yes, I'm right underneath.
Okay. I'm just gonna write you. All right, who else do we have? Andrea West. She's right there. There's, sorry, we found it, we had a page that got buried into something else. Okay, sorry, what was your name again?
Andrea West.
Andrea West.
On West Street. I'll be right before Chris.
Okay, who else? Did we get everybody? Okay. If he calls you and you gave your time, if you would just help us out and just indicate that we somehow missed crossing it off, we'll go with that.
All right, the person speaking for these people, please come to the mic.
And when you guys go to speak, if you could identify yourself, your name and your location, that will help.
You said I get 20 minutes, and I will not be up here in 20 minutes. I just think it was gonna take more than 3, so I've tried to be prepared. My name's Caitlin Reno, I'm in Mulberry, Indiana. So I'm here today to read an affidavit into the record, and that's why I said it was gonna take longer than 3 minutes. And I want to be really clear, to the Area Plan Commission, of course, that I'm not here to be combative or anything. I'm really just here to be a voice for the people, and to instruct our government on what, the people want. So that's really my intent here. So I just have a few remarks, and then I'll get to that. So everybody here tonight, we really just want our public servants to uphold their oath and do the will of the people. And so my prayer tonight is that you guys have a willingness to listen to what I have to say and some of these others, just with open ears and an open heart. So while the Area Plan Commission is an appointed body, they are still bound by Indiana's Constitution. And so these data centers, they get public money at the state and the federal level, which is actually unlawful. There's no constitutional grant of authority to take public money and to use it for non-public purposes. So a data center, of course, is not a public purpose, even if it brings in tax revenue or broadens the tax base. And you can actually see that clearly outlined in the Supreme Court cases of Loan Association versus Topeka, Parkersburg versus Brown, and Cole versus LaGrange. And it's clearly expressed in North Dakota's Constitution, Article 1, Section 1. So I know sometimes, government officials, they talk about, we need this for revenue or to broaden the tax base, and there's actually nothing in the Constitution, and there's Supreme Court decisions about that as well. I also want to give credit to Mr. Moeller that was on the board, and I want the people here tonight to acknowledge that he's a public servant and he recused himself, and that was the right thing to do. So I just want everybody to acknowledge that he did the right thing. When Mr. Swain was up here, he said that Logix was created specifically for data center development. Just by a show of hands, those here, everyone who doesn't want this land rezone, which could open the door for a data center to come to our community, could you just please raise your hand just as a visual so that they know, so they understand? Okay, thank you. Just some final remarks before I read that into the record is that Clayton County has always been a farming community. I can trace my family over 6 generations back that have lived in Clayton County. And so if we allow a ton of development, like a data center, we turn from a rural farming community to a farmed community. So it would completely change the heart and soul of our community, and that's my opinion. Okay, so without further ado, I'm gonna read this into the record, and then I'll give it to you guys when I'm done. Affidavit of exercise of authority not granted to government concerning the use of public money for non-public purposes such as economic development and the trespass of people's rights to receive redress of their grievances. Notice to agent is notice to principal, and notice to principal is notice to agent. What that means is that if these are submitted, or I know some of you guys in office have received notice and affidavits on other things, that if it's given to the administrative assistant or the secretary, that she's responsible to get it to who it needs to go. If it's given it to a commissioner, that they're responsible distributing it downward to like an area plan and appointed body of whoever's appointed. Applicant, Caitlin Greeno, and everybody else that signed one of these, one of the people as seen in Indiana Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, Republican informed, sui juris, means I'm coming by right, do serve you, Clinton County Area Plan Commission, and all other public officers listed in the distribution list below. This affidavit in this court of record, that would be with a real judge and a jury of peers, to make the following claims that you and your agents may provide immediate due care. Please take notice of the following claims, and that this is sent in reference to all economic development in Clayton County, Indiana, involving the use of public money, including the petition of Logix Realty LLC for a rezone plan for the development of a data center on the agenda at the September 2nd, 2025 Clinton County Area Plan Commission meeting. Claim 1. Notice and demand to cease and desist using public money for non-public purposes such as economic development was served by email to various government servants, including the City of Frankfort Mayor, Frankfort City Council, Clinton County Council, and Clinton County Commissioners beginning on July 23rd, 2025. Said notice claimed that all government servants have an unavoidable obligation to use public money for public purposes, and that the use of public money for a purpose without constitutional authority, such as for public benefits of economic development, including an increase in tax base, tax revenues, employment, or general economic health, is an unofficial act for which there is no immunity. Said notice also demanded that the use of public money for such purposes immediately cease and desist. No response has been given by this county, by anyone that was served that. Claim 2, notice and point of clarity, do people have all power, was served by email to various government servants, including the Clinton County Council and the Clinton County Commissioners beginning August 3rd, 2025. I have not seen a response for that yet either. Applicant claims that government only has granted powers over the subject matter in constitutions, and that all other powers remain with the people. Government cannot create powers outside of granted powers by people and constitutions, not even through any rulemaking or enacted legislation. Furthermore, people are gifted from God with unlimited, unquestionable, and particular rights which cannot be taken away. The right to receive a redress of grievance is one of the reserved and guaranteed common law rights of the people. These rights are secured in the highest law, being all 50 state constitutions and the Constitution of the United States of America. Such rights being reserved to the people and accepted out or set apart from the government. Use of authority by government not granted in constitutions, such as the use of public money for economic development, and failure of any government servant who receives this affidavit to use their granted authority to redress my grievances related to the same is a trespass of my rights and an injury. This is a common law action, and applicant claims that all public officers are trustees and servants and are amenable to the people and have a fiduciary responsibility to protect my property, life, liberty, interests, and pursuit of happiness, including the right to redress of my grievances. Indiana Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we declare that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that all power is inherent in the people, and that all free governments are and have right to be founded on their authority. Indiana Constitution, Article 1, Section 31, no law shall restrain any of the inhabitants of the state from applying to the General Assembly for a redress of grievances. Georgia Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Paragraph 1, public officers are the trustees and servants of the people and are at all times amenable to them. So I just want to take a pause there, because a lot of people wonder why Georgia Constitution is is listed, did you know that your rights can be found in all of the state constitutions? The Constitution of the United States of America, Article 4, Section 2, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of the citizens of the several states. And please take notice of the following definitions in American Dictionary of the English Language, commonly known as the 1828 Webster's Dictionary. I want to explain why that is important as well. Nathaniel Webster was a founding father. He created this dictionary. It's important to know what these words meant at the time of their writing. Redress, to set right, to remedy, to repair, to redress wrongs, to redress injuries, to redress grievances. Grievance, that which causes grief or uneasiness, that which burdens, oppresses, or injures, implying a sense of wrong done or a continued injury. The oppressed subject has the right to petition for a redress of grievances. Amenable, liable to answer, responsible, answerable, trustee, a person to whom anything or business is committed and confidence that he will discharge his duty. And Applicant claims that constitutions are the supreme law of the land, controlling and limiting the powers of any government, and that any statute, code, rule, ordinance, etc. is inferior when not pursuant to constitutions is void. Please take notice that in Black's Law Dictionary, first edition, constitution is defined as the absolute rule of action and decision for all departments and officers of government, and in opposition to which any act or ordinance of any such department or officer is null and void. And in 1828 Webster's Dictionary, Constitution is defined in free states being paramount to statutes or laws enacted by legislatures, limiting and controlling their power. Marbury versus Madison. The people have an original right to establish for their future government such principles as shall most conduce to their own happiness is the basis on which the whole American fabric has been erected. The principles so established are deemed fundamental, and they are designed to be permanent. In declaring what shall be the supreme law of the land, the Constitution itself is first mentioned, and not the laws of the United States generally, but those only which shall be made in pursuance of the Constitution have that rank. Thus, the particular phraseology of the Constitution confirms and strengthens the principles supposed to be essential to all written constitutions, that a law repugnant to the Constitution is void, and that courts as well as other departments are bound by that instrument. That's an excerpt. And please take notice that the federal, state, and local governments provide public money such as financial incentives derived from statutes and administered by the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, such as Indiana Code 6 2.515 for non-public purposes such as economic development. Applicant demands that full disclosure be provided concerning the use of any public money for any economic development project in Clinton County, including the proposed Logic Realty LLC development, and applicant demands that evidence be shown that government has the power to use public money for purposes not authorized in constitutions, such as economic development. Failure to show this evidence means that government does not have the power to use public money for purposes not authorized in constitutions, such as economic development. And applicant demands evidence be shown that government has the power to use discretion concerning the people's right to redress of their grievances, or that the government is not amenable at all times to the people whom they serve. Failure to show this evidence means that government does not have the power to use discretion concerning the people's right to redress of their grievances, and that government is amenable at all times to the people whom they serve. And applicant claims my rights are unconditional and can never be deprived or restricted, and that the deprivation of rights, including the right to receive redress of my grievances, is an injury, a burden, and may be punished. Maximum law. It would be idle and trite to say that no right is absolute. Maximum law. Law is a rule of right, and whatever is contrary to the rule of right is an injury. Maximum law. Punishment is due if the words of an oath be false. Therefore, my demand and order of remedy is that you and your agency immediately cease and desist all activity related to any economic development in Clinton County, including the use of public money, including the proposed Logic Realty LLC development. Maximum law. Remedies are the life of rights. Please take final notice. If you disagree with any of the above claims, rebut by sworn affidavit under penalty of perjury, point by point, to the applicant's address below. That's mine and everybody else that submitted these within 5 days, or you agree by tacit acquiescence that all is truth and law and shall remain forever a part of this court of record and shall be heard by an arbitrator of my choice at your expense, and that you are acting with full knowledge, intent, and malice against one of the people. You also agree the matter is forever settled. All responses not sworn under penalty of perjury are considered non-responses, and agents or attorneys under contract who suppress this affidavit agree to pay the applicant $100,000. Furthermore, continued exercise of authority not granted in Constitution or violation of applicant's rights will incur a fee of $500,000 per infraction upon receipt of this affidavit. That's all I got. Thank you, guys. I give all the rest of my time to Kelly Stuff, should she need it. Thank you.
Okay, these are for you. I gave you guys a little constitution.
Next up will be John Warren, Harrison Street.
I'd like to thank the members of the committee for hearing us out today. We've got a lot of people who turned out, even those of us who hate public speaking like myself. John Warren, my name is John Warren. I live on North Harrison Street. We just heard that from Liz here that there's been not a single independent study on the effects this data center is going to have on our town's resources. The reason they're coming to a small town like us is so they can plunder our resources. There's been cities who have let these things into their town, has massive effects on their power. They've seen increased bills, they've seen brownouts, which is where you don't have enough electricity to power your appliances. There was a city in Arizona who rejected it after realizing the amount of water it was going to take. There's a city in Colorado who lit one in and barely has enough water pressure to shower anymore. The gentleman over here used some cute language. He said most of these things don't use water anymore. They've never stipulated that theirs will not require any water. And in fact, one of the recommendations by Liz was that they should not be able to drill wells willy-nilly on the property, which it seems like they fully intend to do. These things on average produce noise of about 92 decibels, which is approximately the same amount of noise as a motorcycle. These gentlemen are recommending that we build a building. It's going to take all of our power, it's going to take all of our water, and it's going to scream day and night, all day and night. I think it was a surprise to some of us that Logix brought their high-powered attorney. The gentleman on the left is a partner of his law firm. Looking around, we don't have a high-powered corporate real estate attorney on our side representing the public interests of the people of Frankfurt to negotiate this deal, or providing recommendations or experience or independent studies. We also haven't received any independent studies about the amount of jobs that will be brought into town. The gentleman said that there would be about 170. And their best estimates by the report that they paid for said that about 35% of them might stay in the area. I'm skeptical of that. You know that most of these jobs are probably going to be from out of town. We don't have people here in town who are going to be hanging server racks. So for all these reasons, we ask that you vote unfavorable today. This is going to take a large section of our land. It's going to take it from farmland. We've got a lot of people here who are farmers. We've got families that are farmers, and they'll never be able to farm that land again. The water that they take out of our soil is going to be contaminated by this thing. And if they can put it back, which they might not be able to, it's going to be gone forever. The gentleman on the right said that the time is expired.
I'd like to do my other than my time. I'm the next one.
Are you Emily?
Yes.
Very good.
I appreciate you hearing me out today. The gentleman on the right said that we have our opportunity to talk. Well, this is our opportunity, and our answer is you can't have our land. Appreciate your time and hearing us out today.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Russ Kessler.
Thank you. My name is Russ Casper. I live at Little Lakes Estates. And I am not here representing Casper Media, the radio station, or County Daily News, etc. I'm here as an individual. And so I'm not for or against. I am in the information gathering stage. And it's kind of like, what could possibly go wrong? Well, hopefully we'll find that out. And there are facts, there are opinions, and there are assumptions. And I think it would be a big mistake for this community to blur these things. It's, get the fact, get the opinions, and get the assumptions and treat them separately. Now, a couple things that I am concerned about. We have about a $200,000 investment started in the year 2000 for Prairie Grass Observatory, if you want to include the nature center, with hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours. We have a gift in this county, and that is that we can see the Milky Way. Now, it may not be a big deal to you, but I can guarantee you it's a big deal for a lot of people that visit and not have a chance to observe that. So I'm a guardian of the stars in the county, and it can be killed. You can just say goodbye to it if you want. You can kiss it goodbye, and if that's what you want, then, but things can happen. For instance, work with Liz on the ConAgra. If you go by ConAgra, you'll see that the light mitigation is very well dealt with. And it almost looks like it's hovering because there's very little light above and very little light below. There's no light trespass. So, not opposed to progress. I'm not particularly fond of having another 2 or 3 power lines installed at Little Lakes going right through that area. I understand that they have a right of way, but is another power line going to be strong all across our county, including near my house? That's about all I have to say. Facts, opinions, assumptions. Let's all sort this out and have a good time.
Thanks, man. Thank you, Mr. Casper. Brenda Colson, First Street.
Can I just
I'm
stand here?
sorry, Wilshire.
Can I just stand here?
No, you need to go to the microphone.
Unfortunately, it's broadcast.
Okay.
So, I mean, fortunately, I don't mean unfortunately, but unfortunately for you having to walk. It's broadcast.
Okay, so I wasn't even gonna talk, but since Caitlin was gonna talk about something else, and these gentlemen up here gave me a different insight.
Sorry, what's your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Brenda Wilson.
Mike.
Speak into the mic.
Can you guys all hear me?
Speak into the mic.
So I have a different insight after these gentlemen talked up here. They say that there's not gonna be as much water usage. I don't really believe that. They say that 35% of the people working at the facility, Frankfurt has really nothing to offer. We don't have a bowling alley anymore. We don't have a movie theater. And I think if we had 35% working at this facility, that the 35% might already be in Clinton County. And now I know that the taxes and stuff, this sounds like a great opportunity for Clinton County, it really does. But please don't cloud your judgment for just money that I think the data center will be very bad. Unless there is, like the gentleman said, and by the way, that was very good. And I can't remember your name, so I'm very stressed right now. I've been sick all weekend because of this. And if they can provide more data that says it's not going to take the water, and also the water that they do take is not recyclable. It doesn't, I've heard that, and I've done some research, I was going to read it up here on abstract, that the water they use, we can't put it back into the environment. So I would just encourage you at this point, before they can, unless they can guarantee all this stuff, that it would be good for our county. I think right now, the data center, I personally, and I don't want it to go closer, it looks like it's gonna go closer to Camp Column, and I think that's what you were talking about. That is, to me, a very bad place for this data center. I'm not saying that we could put it somewhere else in the county. Once we got the data, that it would be good for the county, which I don't believe it would be now, period, at all. So I would encourage you to vote no on this proposal. If you give it a 30-day term, I would very encourage you until we get more data. And I personally think it's in a very bad location for a lot of reasons to put this data center. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I cannot read signature, but you live at 959 West Green.
I get my bids.
Okay. Same thing on the signature. This is 705 West Barner Street.
I'd say a good day, but this is not a good day right now for any of us.
If you could get,
Chris Pittenger, 705 West Farmer Street, Frankfort, Indiana, 46041. So I guess one of the questions of many, Russ kind of touched one for me. Also, this project he talked about was an Eagle Scout project that was put in, which means a lot to the Boy Scouts. Second of all, are we going to be giving any money as far as land or anything like that? Abatements? Can you tell us that, sir?
I have no idea. That's out of our bailiwick.
Man in charge is up here speaking. Can you tell us, are you going to come for any abatements?
so what we'll do is, if he'll note that, he'll have a chance to answer any questions that come out of public comment at the end, but it becomes chaotic if we
All
try
I
to.
want is a yes or no, so we've got it on the record. If he says no, then we know there shouldn't be any abatements put towards this.
Well, this board doesn't look at abatements. And
You should look at everything, sir, that's your job.
No, it's actually not. To cover that, that's the fiscal body will take care of
Ms.
this.
Jones,
County, the city. We are looking at rezoning money. To answer your question.
I think a monitor should be put on the water supply since it's such a big question here. And they have to stick to it. You need to have their feet held to the fire. You can't make statements that you can't cover. Just like we're talking about, I appreciate you talking about TIF a little bit. Most people don't know what TIF money is. Most people don't know what grant money is. Folks, it's all your tax money, whether it's here, statewide, or federal. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. Then, I would also like to say, I think maybe it would be a good idea to put an oversight committee over this, of the public, and put some good people into place to overlook this, to make sure that we are not getting lied to, or getting the truth, because there's a lot of things going around right now, and I think everybody just wants the truth. So I thank you for listening to me. I wish I took some notes, and I'd been a little better prepared, but that gentleman talked about a lot of stuff that I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Robin Butler, I believe. Or someone named Butler.
We're having a hard time hearing you.
Next on my list is what I believe to be Robin Butler.
I passed it.
Okay.
If no one takes Robin Butler's place, I'd like it. Oh, my bad, sorry. I had to wait.
I'm sorry.
Carry on.
Matt Stidham.
All right, good evening, board. Matt Stidham. I am one of the residents that is going to be affected by this. My address is 3113 West County Road 100 North, so My biggest concerns is the lack of information that we've received. I know that they spoke a little bit ago about, they came to the homeowners, but I can assure you as a homeowner, 9 days after it was put into the paper that they're gonna have this, I had a real estate agent from Lafayette show up to my house with his wife, hand me a piece of paper, said, here's the offer we want to make you, look at it, tell us what you want to do. I can assure you, looking at myself and my neighbors that I have around me, a lot of those are in their 70s. They don't have the availability to just up and move, and they don't have the availability to have this in their backyard. So for me, as a homeowner in that area, I definitely am against having this rezoned. I believe in the fact that our government will look out for us, and one of the things is if you choose to make your decisions tonight, at least reach out to the companies wanting to work in our area and find out some more information. Have them reach out to us more independently versus sending somebody from Lafayette to our area. There's a lot of concerns that we may have. I've listened to everybody in here today talk about the good, the bad. I don't have all the answers. I don't claim to have all the answers. The answers I have right now for me is for me and my neighbors who was left out of this process. I am sure, talking with some of the farmers that I am friends with who have been part of this process, they knew about this long before I did. And as a homeowner in that area, I think it's very unfair of our community to not include the residents going to be affected by this. And that's what I have.
Thank you. Karen Moskovich?
I passed mine.
You passed?
Yes, I have mine.
Kelly Stuff?
My name is Kelly Stuff. I live in Whitestown, so I'm not a resident of Clinton County. However, I am a resident of the state of Indiana, and the topics that I'm going to discuss here will kind of shed light on why, as a resident of the state, would take an interest in what's happening here. The Clinton County Commissioners and the County Council in late July were served with a notice. It's one of two notices that were referenced by Caitlin Carino in her comments earlier. And I am here to read that notice into the record. First of all, before I get started, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's been involved in this process. Liz, I was so impressed by your effort to read absolutely everything. Good job. And Mr. Swain, I appreciate your effort to shed light on the variety of issues related to this. I appreciate everyone's input. I do have a question. Commissioner Myers and Mr. Chenoweth should have received both the notice I'm about to read and the notice that Caitlin Carino read earlier. And I'm just wondering if either of you can confirm whether you have been receiving notices that the people have been sending you.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, appreciate that. I know the notice that Caitlin read, I believe, or I'm sorry, the affidavit was sent by over 160 people, and I believe the notice I'm about to read was sent by at least 47 people. So what we're sharing is more than representative of just our opinions. Okay. So this notice is called Notice of Demand to Cease and Desist Using Public Money for Non-Public Purposes, such as Economic Development. And it says notice to agent is notice to principal, and notice to principal is notice to agent. And as Caitlin mentioned earlier, that's a request that, when these notices are sent, and there's someone central in an office who receives them, to make sure that it's appropriately disseminated to all the distributees on the list. So this, as I
30
said.
seconds. 30 seconds remaining.
She received a large
Caitlin
one.
gave me the rest of her time.
Okay.
So I think there's like 10 minutes, I won't be that long. So I, Kelly Stuff, one of the people, as seen in the 50 state constitutions, Republican form, sui juris, which means by right, do serve you this notice by necessity that you do provide immediate due care. Please take notice that all power is inherent in the people, Indiana Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, and that the people have a right to lawfully instruct their government, Indiana Constitution, Article 1, Section 31, and that entities, including corporations and bodies politic, are created with the permission of the people and are obligated to act in good faith and with due regard solely for the people's benefit. Maxim of law. Good faith demands that what is agreed upon shall be done. Maxim of law. The welfare of the people is the supreme law. And please take further notice that all government servants have an unavoidable obligation to use public money for public purposes, and that the use of public money for a purpose without constitutional authority is an unofficial act for which there is no immunity. Trump versus United States, 2024. In Black's Law Dictionary, first edition, taxes are defined as, quote, burdens or charges imposed by the legislature upon persons or property to raise money for public purposes. And in Black's Law Dictionary, second edition, public purpose is defined as the law of taxation. This is a term to distinguish the objects for which, according to settled usage, the government is to provide from those which are left to private interest. Authority granted in the constitutions must be used exactly as specified without any departure. Furthermore, if the constitutions do not expressly grant such authority, it does not exist. See evidence below. Maxim of law. From the words of the law, there must be no departure. Maxim of law, that expression of one thing is the exclusion of another. And please take further notice that according to settled usage and the text, history, and tradition in constitutions, economic development, such as solar farms, wind farms, carbon sequestration projects, or data centers, are not a public purpose. See evidence below. North Dakota Constitution, Article 1, Section 16. A public use for a public purpose does not include public benefits of economic development, including an increase in tax base, tax revenues, employment, or general economic health. See also Louisiana Constitution, Article 1, Section 4. Loan Association versus Topeka, 1874. We have established, we think, beyond cavil, that there can be no lawful tax which is not laid for a public purpose. It may not be easy to draw the line in all cases so as to decide what is a public purpose. In the case before us, there is no difficulty in holding that this is not such a public purpose as we've been considering. If it is said that a benefit results to the local public of a town by establishing manufacturers, the same may be said of any other business or pursuit which employs capital or labor. No line can be drawn in favor of the manufacturer which would not open the coffers of the public treasury to the importunities of 2/3 of the businessmen of the city or town. See also Park Reserve versus Brown and Cole versus LaGrange. And please take further notice that the fact that public money has already been used for non-public purposes creates no validity to continue to use public money for such purposes, and it remains an unofficial and voluntary act for which there is no immunity. See evidence below. Maxim of law, things invalid from the beginning cannot be made valid by subsequent act. Maxim of law, certain legal consequences are attached to the voluntary act of a person. Loan Association versus Topeka. If the legislature was without power and its statute is void, payment of interest, which was equally unauthorized, cannot create a power to levy taxes resting on the fact that they have once been illegally levied for that purpose. Question: where in the Indiana Constitution is there a grant of authority to use public money for non-public purposes? Failure to serve this constitutional provision means you understand and agree that public money cannot be used for public purposes. Please take final notice that is my wish, order, and demand that you provide remedy by immediately ceasing and desisting using public money for non-public purposes. If you believe that the government has been granted power to use public money for non-public purposes, please respond with the constitutional grants of authority, or you agree that this practice is unlawful. Furthermore, please respond if you disagree with any of the claims within this notice. All responses shall be made within 5 days receipt of this notice by sworn affidavit, point by point, under penalty of perjury, or you agree by tacit acquiescence to all claims herein, and this notice shall stand as evidence against you in all courts of record, that no court may rehear this matter, that this matter may be heard by an arbitrator of my choice, and that if remedy as instructed is not given, the people to whom you swore an oath will recognize it as being done purposefully with full knowledge, malice, and intent. All responses not sworn under penalty of perjury are considered non-responses. This notice is sent in the peace and love of Jesus Christ, that you provide due care to those who hold all power, the people. Maxim of law, one lawfully commanding must be obeyed. Maxim of law, judicial notice is a form of evidence. This notice was sent to the Clinton County Commission and the Clinton County Council in the last week of July, and no responses were received. That's all. Thank you.
Your time has expired. Dylan Stambaugh.
I don't have anything to add.
All right. Susan Gates.
Susan Gates, from Burlington Avenue in Frankfurt. Thank you tonight.
You can lower that microphone if you like.
I'm a little nervous. I have a huge concern about what's going on in the environment, and I'm going to say the insects. Where are the insects? Remember when we were younger, you would have to wash the windshield just from here to Indianapolis. So where are all the insects, the pollinators? That is my huge concern, and it has been, not just since the data centers. So I'm gonna go a little different now. I swore in 1977 to uphold the Constitution when I joined the military. And so I still have that obligation, and so the law of the land is the Constitution. And I was willing to put my name on the line. Notice and point of clarity. Do people have all power? Notice to agent is notice to principal, and notice to principal is notice to agent. I, Susan Conrad Gates, one of the people, as seen in Indiana Constitution Article 1, Section 1, Republican in form, sui juris, to present you this notice so that you do provide due care. Please take notice that I, as one of the people, wish for you to give a point of clarity based on your position as a sworn trustee. If you agree that all power is inherent in the people, please take notice that Indiana Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 reads, "We declare that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that all power is inherent in the people, and that all free governments are and of right ought to be founded on their authority, the institute for their peace, safety, and well-being, for the advancement of these ends, the people have at all times an indefeasible right to alter and reform their government. Please respond publicly within 10 business days with clarity and regard to understanding if all power comes from the people or not." Warren, Susan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Our final speaker will be Lisa Hoffman.
She needed time down here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, awesome, great.
Does everyone feel okay with me just dropping because I'm the last one to touch it?
Name and address, please.
Understood. Yes, my name is Venetia, last name is Morris, 1545. Please redact this part because this is a live stream, so I'm happy to provide you that on paper. For the locals, I live in Charles Taylor's old house over by Goose. The man is 96 years old. He's my neighbor. He is a very sweet man and tells me that he used to be the mayor of Frankfurt. So I don't necessarily believe that's true. I'm a bit of a transplant, but I'll just go run with the local board. The thing, time, how much time? Thank you. Long and short is, code is going to stand, right? But personality wins a trial. And while this isn't trial necessarily by judge, this is trial by community. And is this the CEO of logistics?
No.
Okay. Well, I looked up that man, and he's got a really nice rap sheet. I mean, a very incredible businessman, great business acumen. But the reality is that he lacks, I think, some of the depth and the decorum that is needed to approach this project in the community as tight as Frankfurt is. As to the other gentleman who was discussing the abatement issues, part of the, I think, wheel and deal house issue for this project is the piece of using, and again, I'm not up to date on the most up to the minute information, so forgive me if there is an error. I also apologize for speaking too quickly. But the tax abatement that is on the ConAgra plant land, that logistics also broke the deal in, is a 25-year tax abatement. That's 25 years. No taxes being paid. I would like 25 years with no taxes being paid, right? Okay, so I think that was a touch point. But the conversations that are happening are things that need to go on for longer discourse. And I think if you can't beat them, join them, right? So in the reality that we get railroaded, as we've seen in much of the small communities in Indiana, since we opened our floodgates to the data centers, which used to be actually on the ocean. Google would have haulers for their data centers on the ocean, but we can't do that anymore. Just saying. So I think we need to have a conversation. If Frankfurt really wants to dig into this, take into accountability, regardless of what the current conversation is about, eco and sustainability, and we think about how to make the development green and first of its kind to actually bring the resources to the community that logistics says it's going to bring. Thank you very much. God bless America.
Are you ready to discuss this? Would you like to have something from the petition in response to the comments?
I know Mayor Pippin's. ask the question.
Yeah, I think there was a question from Mayor Kavinger that he asked the developer if they were willing to respond to.
Are you willing to respond to that question this time?
Yes, I will hold up a minute or two just to respond to that.
You go ahead.
Oh, sure.
I know we've all been here for a while tonight, so I promise I won't take too much time. I appreciate all your comments again, even though I know I feel like maybe I'm a little bit in firing squad here, but that's okay. Just a couple quick comments. And I think one of the first speakers said something about the minority. There was only one that spoke in favor of it, although there are 33,000 other people, I think, that live in this county. So presumably some of them are for that, some of them may be different or what have you. But I'm just going to go down here. There was a comment, the first woman that got up here that spoke about a lot of the constitutional things. And then one later that spoke about using public money for non-public purposes. We are not using public money for this project, so that was a little bit confusing to me. And we talked about the constitutional right of the people. But what about, that's true, and life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. But I would also ask to that people put the other hat on. And what about the people that do wish to sell their land? I mean, people that have farmed it, people that have owned it for years. And this is, they deserve and have a right to be able to sell their land and be able to recognize the fruits of that investment and that labor and their time and efforts and sweat over a number of years. They have rights and they should be able to sell that land. And as long as it is consistent with what the city or the county wants or desires or consistent with some of their plans for growth. I think that sometimes gets overlooked. We brought up a question about TIF. So again, this is probably, we can talk about a whole separate section on TIF, but TIF stands for tax increment financing. It's used by municipalities primarily to capture tax revenue that's thrown off by a particular project to invest in infrastructures. There is well-known case law and there are rules and stipulations about what that money can be spent on, and typically it's infrastructure to support public uses. You can go to some cities, and this city has used it, I'm sure, but there are other cities that have used it more extensively, and they are usually, it is built for parking garages, it's built for other areas. In this case, I think the city or the county could divert that and use it for public good that not even is specifically designated for this project. We really aren't asking, we're not coming as an apartment developer and saying, hey, this project doesn't work unless the city builds its parking garage. And the only way the city can build its parking garage is to create a TIF district and take some of that money to build a parking garage. We're not asking for that. Could some of that be used for roadways? Could be, but that's not really what we're going into this as. So I would ask that the TIF structure that was put in place is years ago, and it can benefit way more things and other things, and probably maybe 100% entirely other things than this project. The water was spoken to a couple of times. As I mentioned, the groups don't use water today. Most of them don't. But I am willing to have a conversation and make a commitment to the water usage on this site to assure and give confidence to those people that are concerned about the water usage, because I don't think we'll need it. So if you're concerned about large water usage, I mean, that and other things that we talked about tonight can be incorporated into the zoning approval. The lack of information, and I spoke, I know you talked from the resident standpoint. I will say, and I alluded to before, we made a mistake when we did this. In that we did not contact those residents around there, and I wish we would have. It was a mistake, I admit it, I apologize, there's nothing I can do in hindsight other than to try to make it right. There was no intent to go around, exclude, or anything else with the residents. We don't want to do that. And part of what we did in kind of pulling it back and not having a 700-acre submittal petition for rezoning is hopefully to give additional time for consideration of the project and how that might flow and be grown or not grown or staged or what happens to those residents. We knew when we did it, we were going fast because we had a couple of users that really wanted larger tracts of land. And we knew that we had to get some initial zoning in place, and we wanted to go back, and we knew it would naturally take longer for the residents because of their residents in their homes. We were sensitive to that, but we did understand in hindsight that maybe, that they were insensitive about that, and it was not the right approach. I apologize for that. Those groups have mostly gone on. So for those that are in data centers and always will be, congratulations. Those groups probably will not come here. And then the other thing I just want to just say, concern about the environment. We certainly are, and I would tell you that these companies that come in are very concerned about it, and they're also very concerned about the communities. And the history is that they typically come in and invest in the communities that they're in, whether it's invest in parks, invest in Ivy League tech schools, different things to try to create communities that are environment, and we can show examples of that. The final thing I'll say is with regard to the ConAgra, yes, I was involved with the ConAgra project. It was a 20-year abatement, and it wasn't 100% abatement, and I hate the word abatement, and I wish nobody gave abatements. I just don't like it. I wish everybody could do away with them altogether, but the reality is that different communities offer, it's more or less a reduction of tax. It's not really an abatement. But in that particular case, it was 10 years that were 100% abated, and then 10 years, basically 50%. So you did start to receive revenue from that, and I think the governor or the mayor at the time bonded that and did some improvements in parks and so forth. But we didn't ask for that. So we never asked for a 20-year abatement. We only asked for what was standard in the community to be competitive with the other regions, which was a 10-year abatement, which was a sliding scale, which would have been essentially a 50% real property tax abatement. The mayor at the time was so aggressive and felt that in order, he really wanted to get them here, thought that he came out with a super aggressive proposal, but we never asked for it. And of course, ConAgra said, well, okay, we'll do it. But I think at the time, the city really wanted that project. When we came in for the initial meeting, the mayor assembled the Ivy Tech schools, the utility board, the different stakeholders in the community, and they all sat there and said, what can we do to bring you here? We really, really want you here. And that's what led to discussions. And unfortunately, I think there has been some negative, association with that, but that was really a function of the mayor at the time really running the business. But it was not 100% abatement. It was a 20-year, and it was. I would tell you, it probably was more aggressive than, we needed to, but they were very anxious and eager to get the business, and that's what they did. So, anyway, that's all I have to say. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yep.
I'm going to close the public portion of this hearing tonight and defer to the board to discuss.
Speak up, please.
I'm closing the public portion of this meeting and deferring now to the board for discussion.
You guys as board members do your best to kind of pass those mics back and forth so people can hear that conversation.
Speak into the mic.
I think we've still got some unanswered questions here tonight. And there's a lot of concern there in my mind. One of the things I'm concerned about is the loss of railroad access. This is one of the few remaining places that we have that. We're being told it's likely going to be a data center. Other types of facilities could make use of that. So that's one of the things that I'm concerned about going forward with this site. The other thing is particularly the lack of public input leading up to this point that we're at now. Liz has gone over quite a few things in detail here. I think she made some very good points. And I'm sorry. You're good. You're good. I'm just not sure I'm ready to move forward with the rezoning at this time. So I would ask you folks what you think.
Well, to me, this has been very informative tonight on both sides. My goal, when I ran for commissioner, and with any position I'm in, I want to hear the pros, the cons, the pluses, the minuses, and I want to know all this up, down, forward, backward. And this meeting tonight is something that should have occurred 3 months ago.
Yes, sir.
So that we could all make informed decisions. We can weigh out the options And it's for the too many unanswered questions that I don't feel like I could be in favor of anything but a negative recommendation.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody. This is the first time I've been part of anything like this. And it's been good. I like what Russ said, and I totally agree with Russ. I've been elected, I think, to hear everything that needs to be heard, and I heard from everybody here. And my thought is, I'd like to give them 30 days because I'd like for PIP, that group, to get as many citizens as possible so that the whole town can hear this. I feel better with what I heard tonight. At least I heard information. Yeah. There was a commissioner, there may be a couple of commissioners that didn't have any information. So if you feel like you're behind the 8 ball, a lot of us have been behind it. So I feel better from what I've heard. But I got to tell you, I think that some people, if it wasn't for the data center, it doesn't matter what comes to that property or that industrial park, you're going to say no to it. And you heard the comprehensive plan here. And it's going to go one day the industrial park is going to grow. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Growing, you have all our resources and raising everything we have.
You didn't understand me. I'm just saying, I listened to you, but you talk about the farm ground like it's my farm ground. It's a farmer's farm ground.
I don't care what they do with it. Are they going to stick around when all our taxes shoot up, when our water prices are going up? They still.
I appreciate everything that's been said tonight. I really
Be
do.
respectful of your time, please be respectful of us. This is a board discussion now.
So my last thing would be, as a county councilman, I heard some things I wanted to hear that nobody on the council knows anything about, so I want to take some things back, but I'm looking forward to another public meeting. That's what I'm looking forward to. That would be I've heard Kevin, so that's fine.
Okay, it's back to what I said initially. There's this, something throughout and wanted some answers. And, we don't have enough information. There's no way, we got a little bit more tonight, but we're still a long ways from making a total decision. And, right now I would say I'm not totally in favor, but, somebody's got to prove me different. And so I don't jump on anything. And I think there's too many unanswered questions.
Well, I agree with the unanswered question portion of it. Initially, I'm still probably in favor of a negative recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, just because there are unanswered questions out there. I heard and learned a lot. Mr. Swain explained a lot to me, and I learned quite a few things about these. I've also read some more negative items about it from what I consider to be reliable sources. And I guess I'm open to somebody making a motion, one way or another. You have any thoughts on that, Jan?
I'm not pushing.
Okay, what would you like to make?
Rezoning.
Any other motion?
Well, my motion would be to give them that 30 days. That would be my motion.
So I have a motion on the table from Jeff for a single 30-day continuance that the board will allow to gather more information. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I believe so. Is that a motion, Jeff?
That's a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second for that motion.
You guys, I've got to be able to hear.
It would appear that motion has died for a lack of a second. Okay. I will make a motion to send a negative recommendation to the county commissioners, simply because we have not been informed. This came as kind of quite a surprise to us. And I don't know anything about data centers other than what I've learned tonight, what little research I've been able to do. I'm not totally against it. If they can come out and demonstrate to this community that this will be worthwhile, and will be a financial impact to us that will benefit this community, I would be in favor of it. But at this time, I'm not in favor of the recommendation to approve this. So So my motion is to simply make a recommendation to the county commissioners.
And I will second that.
Yes.
I would also like to say that this should be the very beginning of the hearings that we should have for the county commissioners. That as we move forward, even with a negative recommendation, this will go before the commissioners, and all the questions should be answered.
You're absolutely right. This is only the beginning. This is just a recommendation. Commissioners can do what they want. So with that, I will call for a roll call of membership, please. There may be a recommendation.
I do have one question as staff, on the negative recommendation. When we prepare that blue pack, does the board wish to send in an advisory capacity a note to commissioners, and if they choose not to take the negative recommendation, because by state law, they're allowed to consider a lot of other things along with this board's recommendation, would the board like to send some sort of formal advice that they would advise the commissioners to strongly consider adopting some commitments, should they choose to rezone, to put some guardian walls on that rezoning in case whatever they think may happen does not, or do we want to leave that open-ended, it's just a negative? Commissioners can, of course, always request staff help with that process if they want to add commitments. But they do have to be recorded, there's a process for that, it doesn't just happen because it verbally is said in a meeting.
I think we just want to do it.
Okay, perfect. All right, are you ready for a roll call vote? All right, so this is a vote to send a negative recommendation to the legislative body, in this case, the county commissioners. Dan Sheets?
Yes.
Walt Minnick?
Yes.
Jeff Chanellis?
No.
Kevin Myers?
Yes.
So you need 4 in order to act. So your motion does not carry. So you have 2 options. You can try to propose something else, discuss among yourselves and vote again. You can see if you can reach consensus to send no recommendation, because you cannot reach a consensus. But at the moment, you got it back.
Well, I would make another motion that we send a no recommendation to the county commission. We have a motion and a second to send a non-opinion to the county commissioners.
So anything you guys heard? I don't think that.
All right, so
30 days should be another.
I don't think it should. They've had the opportunity to come in here before and go down this road, but they declined to do that. So I think we need to go on. I think these people want us to move on our constituents.
sorry, Walt, I can't hear you. I'm sure other people can't. Keep talking to the mic because you're conversing with each other.
All I said is the commissioners are going to have a final vote on this.
So your motion is no
My
recommendation.
motion is no recommendation to the commission.
Are you guys ready for a vote?
Do we have a second?
Walt,
Yeah,
seconded,
Walt.
I believe. Did you? Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
Roll call vote, please.
All right, so this is a vote, due to being,
If you're interested in a non-recommendation, yes. We'll vote whatever you want to do.
What kind of discussion did we have here? I mean, that wasn't a bunch of words. So I guess I would, if I'm changing my vote, it's just so that we've got 4 members.
no, that's understand, and that's would not be the first time that's
But it
occurred.
doesn't matter, because it's going to the commissioners, and they're gonna do what they're gonna wanna do anyway.
If you
Because
can,
they've seen this, they've heard this, they know me. So
we've had board members in the past that if you feel like you want to put on the record by speaking into the mic, the reason why you're changing what you're doing, then you can definitely do that. That way it's in the record why you did it. Obviously, we need 4 together to take any action, whatever it may be.
Well, Liz, I'm confused, because this is how I feel. I mean, this is how I feel. I feel like I'd
We're
like.
limited by not having the.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't want to be heavy here because 3 other people didn't show up.
So I think you have 2 options as a board. Yes, if you feel like you want to change your vote to a negative just so there's a consensus and you want to specify that so that it's on the record, if you didn't agree with it, but you didn't see the point in hanging the board indefinitely over a lack of ability to get 4 as required by state law to act, you can do that. Or if you feel firmly the way you feel and you don't want to change your vote, which is totally fair, then the answer to that would be to send no recommendation to the county commissioners as the final decision-making body and vote unanimously for that. They're going to be able to review this hearing on YouTube. 2 commissioners are in the audience and on the board today. So they've heard the testimony. You know, I think they're aware, and basically you're just saying it's ultimately the commissioner's decision. This board is unable to reach a majority opinion. So instead of blockading it and being stuck, we're just going to send it to them to figure it out.
So I will vote no recommendation, and I would vote yes on that. But I still stand that I'd like to hear more from this group. I think they've earned it. I don't know what's happened in the past. I know what I finally got to hear and see tonight. So that this meeting means something, I will vote with the other 3 members.
So I'm going to take a roll call vote then for sending a neutral or no recommendation to the county commissioners, simply to pass it on so they can then decide what to do with it. And starting with Dan Sheets.
Yes.
Walt Minnick.
Yes.
Jeff Chanelwit.
Yes.
And Kevin Myers.
Yes.
Okay, so can everybody hear me? Because I don't have a mic. Yeah. I just want to make sure people can track. So the commissioners meet the 1st and the 3rd Tuesdays of each month. This, of course, is the 1st Tuesday, so we have to send the recommendation up at their next regularly scheduled meeting. So that will be, Kevin, help me out, is that the 16th?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the 16th of September that it'll come to the commissioners. They then have 90 days in which they can decide what to or not to do with that. So if you are wanting to follow this, you'll need to then go to their hearing, but that's when I, as Plan Commission staff, will present the board's recommendation.
What time? 9 a.m.?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 9 a.m. and the commissioners do meet in the courthouse down in the commissioner's room.
What's that? Do we have any other business?
I'm sorry,
Do we have any other business?
we do not have any other business tonight.
All right.
Make a motion.
Second.
Sorry, who was my motion and my second?
Jeff and Kevin.
Kevin was, hey guys, can you just for just a second?
Jeff, 1, Kevin, 2.
Okay, perfect, thank you. We are now adjourned. Carry on.